Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Rias changes Naruto completely part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. The underworld. Hell.The netherworld. Not the place that a person would expect there to be anyone who had any amount of purification power to their name. It was also not a place where somebody would expect a human to be, even more so a young human boy. He was Uzumaki Naruto. He was a rare transmigrant, somebody who had a rare soul that crossed between worlds. It was a rather difficult thing to explain, but the best way he could say it was that he was a fraction. He was not the original, but at the same time he was a part of the original. He was a fragment of Naruto, a man who had chakra so powerful it leaked out of his own universe and into the universe of other worlds. That chakra awakened him. He was born in this world, he was this world's Naruto, but at the same time he awakened. He gained some of the memories and part of the power of the Naruto who transmigrated into his soul. His memories of the worlds were jumbled up in a way, but in a funny way that he realized what had happened to him. In this world, he was blessed with parents who were connected enough for him to abuse those connections. As he grew older, he gained more memories of himself from the other universe, memories that corresponded with his physical age. His parents wanted him to abuse that knowledge to create a new magic system that their family could gain even more profits from. His parents adopted him in this world. Funny that I was adopted by this world's Hashirama Senju and Mito Uzumaki parents, more like grandparents. Naruto thought to himself. The world that he got the memories from labeled those two people as dead, one of which was the first Hokage of that world. In this world, he was the first chairman of the Senju Magic Institute of Medical and Nature Studies. A school that focused completely on medical magic and nature magic, and all of the students were those who had those abilities. Why was he in the underworld? Because he was here to get somebody. All those opposed to the execution of the Nekashu, Shirin, please step forward and state your reasons. I oppose. The child. This girl has a purification power. As a Nekashu Yokai of a nearly extinct species, she is a very useful person. Naruto stepped forward, and while nobody realized he was human right away, it didn't take long for them to laugh at him for being young. He was close to the age of the young, white-haired girl who was about to be executed. Another man stepped forward, with red hair. The Devil King Surzich's Lucifer. That is why I will take, since she is an endangered species and has not committed a crime worthy of execution. I have sent a letter to the leader of the Yokai, informing them of this girl's execution. Naruto bluffed just as Surziches started to talk, not even noticing the man. He looked around and he saw a couple of people stop laughing as they talked among each other. Naruto could see that his words had some effect. Which is why I will be taking her, unless you devils want a war with Yokai over the wrongful execution of one of their own. Naruto asked as he looked around. More people stopped laughing. It wasn't funny for them to laugh anymore the second that war was mentioned after all, and it was well known that the Yokai were not a faction to be taken lightly. They belonged to a different pantheon completely, meaning incurring their wrath could start a war with their entire pantheon as well. The war they had no real chance of winning, so even if the words came from a child's mouth, to laugh and not take the threat of war seriously would be a bad thing for them. The girl raised her eyes towards Naruto. War? Surziches asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow. Not only that, but Kuroka never went to trial. The devil cat Kuroka killed her master, but the fact was, nobody knows what a reason was. This girl is the last known Nekashu, the last one, since her sister was turned into a devil. She killed her master, but you don't know how or why. You don't even know that she did it for sure. Were there any witnesses to the crime? Did Kuroka kill him in self-defense? Was he planning to abuse her sister, who was not his property? Naruto listed a few reasons. An innocent never runs. You planned to execute her sister, who committed no crimes and is for sure innocent. I'm sure that Kuroka knew that unless she ran away, she would be executed without a fair trial. Naruto argued, since he was sent here for the girl, he had to use all of his wordplay to ensure that he managed to get her. He saw a small light returning to the dead eyes of the girl who had been set to be executed, who was looking at him with a strange mix of emotions. Of course, executing a known innocent for no reason. Naruto trailed off. She has strong senjutsu in her bloodline, which made her sister go mad. Bullshit, yeah, when you use senjutsu you can get drunk off power, but that is only when a person with no emotional control uses it. Are you telling me that a devil has never gotten drunk off their power before? Naruto asked, since senjutsu was misunderstood, and clearly with bad reason. It would seem the devils were spreading lies about senjutsu to justify their own desire to kill an innocent. Anybody can get drunk off any power because having power is very intoxicating by nature. Naruto looked around. This execution was being recorded. Great. Young man, which house do you belong to? Classism. How about this, if you're so afraid of her, banish her. Banish this girl from the underworld, sell her off to pay for her sister's crimes instead. She's a rare breed, I'm sure a collector would pay handsomely for her. Naruto offered, changing the subject away from his human nature. He was just here to get the girl, not start a war. He was bluffing. And who would benefit from this arrangement? All of you. No war means no devils need to die, and if you sell her, you can make her somebody else's problem. Of course you can't sell what is not your property, so girl, would you like to sell yourself to me? Naruto asked as he approached the girl herself and spoke to her directly for the first time. Wait, she can't sell herself. Okay, then who owns her? Who can I talk to in order to buy her and make her my property? Naruto asked as he looked at the man who shouted out. Apparently, the man thought he would be able to sell her or maybe buy her instead, as the idea of owning the last of a species came to his mind. Naruto's words fell on silence as everyone started to quietly mumble to each other. Who is this boy? Surzich's thought as he stepped back. This was interesting. He planned on buying the girl and giving her as a present to his younger sister, but this was an interesting development. Not only did it raise some ethical questions for his own actions, but it also did a good job of confusing everyone in the room about if the girl's older sister were actually guilty of a crime or not. This boy was human as well, who had no right to be here. They could kill this boy right here and now, and nobody would complain at all. The boy had balls of pure steel to be able to talk into a den of devils and bluff his ass off the way he was bluffing. Surzich's looked towards his fellow devil kings, who all had noticed the same thing as him. His fellows looked just as amused as he looked. Sell myself? She asked. Yep, you'll be my slave, I'll whip you, torture you, and hurt you all day and night. Naruto winked at her several times, but he kept his face turned away from the recording devices. His words seemed to excite the more bloodthirsty devils, who wanted the girl to be faced with harsh punishments for crimes she was innocent of. Naruto gained more support by saying that, but to the girl in front of him, she could clearly see that he was lying about hurting her. And you can pay for all of your sister's supposed crimes, but on Earth under my care. More devils supported that, since if it happened on human territory, then they could wash their hands of the possibility of war as well. The nuts on this boy. Serapho laughed into her hands as she realized the boy wasn't just dangling the truth of his identity to the devils in the room, but he was barely even trying to hide it. Of course, I'll also give a fair share of the payment to all of the devils here. Naruto exclaimed to the room. Everyone else was instantly on his side. I'll sell myself to you. Very well, you all heard that, this girl belongs to me now. You can banish Shirin, but that is all you can do. Naruto already had everyone on his side now, simply by playing to their fear and their greed. Later, this is insane. That boy tricked us. Oh, this is priceless. Surzich's covered his mouth with one hand as he looked at all of this people complaining as they each held up a single 10-yen coin each. The boy had mentioned paying everyone in the room and he played to their greed. He never said how much he was going to pay them or if it would be a price that they would like. He just said a fair share of the payment to everyone. He only paid 1,000 yen for the girl after all, so splitting that much for all of the devils in the room amounted to each of them getting a 10-yen coin each. With Naruto. So, Shirin, since you're banished from the underworld, let's change your name him your small little, and a cat. The super obvious name would be Kaneko. Naruto said that name that everyone would name a small cat. A cute little kitten, or their pet white cats. How does it feel selling yourself into slavery? Naruto asked her. She looked at him. You risked your life for me, I accept that. She accepted being a slave. This boy could have been killed for invading a devil meeting like he did and interrupting their execution ceremonies. She could tell he had been bluffing about starting a war since he seemed too relieved to be out of the underworld and back in the human world. She owed her life to him, so selling herself to him was something she would accept. Well, great, I guess didn't expect you to actually seem happy. Naruto had planned to free her and offer her a chance to study senjutsu at his family school. He just wanted to tease her about her slave status before freeing her, but now he didn't know how to bring up freeing her without making his earlier joke go to waste. So about your name, I was thinking something like Shiraneko or Haneko is fine. I'm your slave, so a simple name is fine. Really, but that name is so boring. Only a person with no creativity would name a cat girl that. Somewhere in the underworld, a red-haired girl sneezed. It's fine, it is the first name you thought of. The now renamed Kaneko stated as she erased her smile and bowed to him. She had a lot to think about, like the fact that even if he was bluffing, he did raise several points about her sister. So Kuroka might be innocent. She might have killed her master for my sake or for self-defense. The renamed Kaneko thought as she looked at her own new master. Great, now I own a slave. Naruto rubbed the side of his head in thought. Naruto, my boy, you were successful, now there is a good boy. An elderly man stepped forward, hunched over and with a cane, as soon as Naruto got out of the limo he and Kaneko were riding in. The man had gray hair and tanned skin, but kind eyes, and he gave off the aura of a forest. Kaneko looked at the man and saw almost no family resemblance between the two. Gramps. Father, I'm not that old yet. Naruto and Hashirama stared at each other in disbelief that he would say he wasn't old enough to be a grandfather, when clearly the man was in his 80s or even his 90s at this point in his life. Hashirama turned away from Naruto and looked at Kaneko before he stepped forward and grabbed her by the cheek, opening her mouth as he grabbed her jaw right after and forced it open. "I'm a little underfed, seems like it will affect her future growth too, sad good genetics in this girl though. Her talent for senjutsu is top-notch and strong purification power to her." Hashirama looked in her mouth and he looked over her tiny body as well. Red rings appeared around his eyes as he was looking at her and he sensed the latent power in her. Strong potential and a powerful connection to nature. A strong affinity for Taki, but little affinity for illusions. He grabbed her tail and spun her around. He let go of her. "Train hard and study hard, since you are my son's property, I expect you to become a top-notch student. So, how much did it cost us for you to buy her?" Hashirama had informed Naruto of the girl's situation and sent him to get her as a test for the boy, but he knew the devils were a greed-filled bunch. Naruto grinned. "I tricked them, barely cost anything at all. If only my daughter Tsunade were as good with money as you. She's your grandchild." "I don't have grandchildren, I'm a young man after all. I only have a lot of sons and daughters." Hashirama sent Naruto a thumbs up. Kaneko looked at the man in a disbelieving way, finding it hard to think that any man would try and deny his age this hard. "Get ready for hell, girl, your studies into senjutsu begins today, then my wife will coach you on your other duties." "Hell, now, everyone just relax in the pool." Hashirama floated on his back in the muddy water of the pool. Kaneko had expected something more severe than just floating in a mud bath with a dozen other students who had begun their senjutsu studies. Most of her classmates were humans, which was funny since it was harder for humans to learn senjutsu than yokai. The entire class seemed to be struggling with the point of the lesson. This was quite relaxing. "So you're my son's slave then?" Somehow, Kaneko actually felt more nervous meeting the elder woman than she did meeting the kind-hearted man. The woman wore completely traditional clothes, and while she had the same scent of age as the man, her appearance was much younger. Instead of looking like she was in her 90s, she had the appearance of a woman in her early 50s instead. Age lines were there, and her hair had darkened by age with what might have been bright red hair, turning a reddish-brown color by the hand of time. She had a purple symbol on her forehead. "Yes, I'm Kaneko." She had the air of a more stern person than Hashirama, and if she was right, then this woman was where Naruto got his Uzumaki from. "Mito Uzumaki. Child, you're skinny, you need to eat. Go to the cafeteria and get yourself well fed, and from now on, I expect you to get at least 7 hours of sleep a night." Mito stated as she started to walk away from Kaneko, having said what she wanted said. Kaneko's nobody was not well hidden by her short white kimono, and the fact she was on the skinny side could not be hidden. "It won't do, it just will not do. A woman can't be too skinny or too fat, she must take care of her health. Clearly, whoever cared for you previously did not make sure you were properly fed." Mito worked herself up and seemed to get pissed off. Kaneko was just stunned. "I'm too skinny. Far too skinny, even if you start to eat healthy now, the damage has been done. Sadly, poor health during your developmental years means you won't grow properly, but with proper meals and sleep, we can offset some of the stunting. Follow me, child." Mito grabbed her wrist and pulled Kaneko along. The cafeteria. Kaneko was stunned when she saw people of all ages attending the school. There were young children, as well as those in their college years, and people nearly 30 years old were eating with them as fellow students. Everyone stood up and bowed to Mito when she passed by them, and she walked with grace and dignity. Some people snickered at Kaneko when they saw her being dragged behind Mito. "Ooh off, poor girl, she's about to get a lesson in nutrition from Mito-sama." Kaneko was worried that she was going to get a painful lesson when Mito took her to the front of the line, skipping several people, and she saw a member of the staff. Kaneko saw a plate of food, meats, cheeses, vegetables, fruits, and garlic toast were being piled up on a plate that Mito held with her free hand. At this school, students are expected to eat 3 square meals a day, and under no situation are they to skip breakfast. "Since you're a runt, I expect you to get seconds during breakfast until you start puberty, and we'll be putting you through a much more strict physical education than the other your age." Mito sat down at a table and forced Kaneko to sit down. "Eat." Kaneko started to shovel the food into her mouth. Mito slapped her head. "Savor it. This food was prepared for you with your benefit in mind, and it is quite delicious. It would be a shame for you to not enjoy it, and be sure to chew properly as well. Drink water regularly while you eat." Mito lectured the way that Kaneko was eating. She reached into her kimono sleeve and pulled out a bottle of ink and a paintbrush. Kaneko started to eat more slowly. Is she mean or nice? Much better, as a woman, you must have class. Mito saw her husband and Naruto join them with their breakfast. Kaneko saw that Naruto was eating twice as much as she was, and Hashirama was eating just as much as Naruto despite his age. Kaneko straightened her back and ate more slowly so as to not show Naruto herself being lectured by Mito. "Naruto, that is not nearly enough, you are a growing boy, be sure to go back for seconds. You'll burn off the calories during your physical education later, so you need to eat even more to grow." "Sure thing, Granny." Mother, clearly I am not old enough to be a grandmother. Mito slapped the side of Naruto's head while the elderly man next to her laughed under his breath. Now Kaneko, since you belong to my son, you are his woman. That makes you part of the Uzumaki, which means you will be seen as a woman of the Uzumaki. That means, I expect you to not only eat well, but also properly show appreciation for your food by keeping your body healthy. After this, you will drink a full glass of water and go to the school's gym. Mito turned her attention back to Kaneko. Man, Mito sure likes Kaneko, she is cute though. Naruto saw Mito laying into Kaneko about taking care of herself. Smack. Naruto, you've already finished, so go get yourself a second helping. How will you grow into a fine young man if you don't eat enough? Mito smacked Naruto for not having already gotten seconds. Kaneko just looked at Naruto and Hashirama's empty plates with shock at how they were already finished. She looked at Mito and saw an empty plate in front of the woman. Kaneko ate her plate. Then, she had to force herself to eat a second helping when she was full because Mito refused to let her stand up from the table until she finished. When she finally finished, she was miserable with the amount of food in her stomach. I've never felt so full. Is it supposed to hurt like this? Kaneko grabbed her belly in pain. Weaklings think the hardest part of proper training is the physical work it takes to put the effort in, but no matter how much you train, your body won't get the full benefit if you don't eat. Having a good appetite is the secret to getting stronger, and in a healthy body, a healthy mind can grow. Mito lectured Kaneko as she grabbed the girl by her hand and pulled her along. Straighten that back, girl, good posture holds many benefits. It makes you appear taller and gives others a better impression of you. Mito forced Kaneko in front of her as they walked, and then she straightened the girl's spine out. Kaneko had questions. I'm just a slave though, why are you taking care of me? You are a woman connected to my son, that makes you part of the family. Slave or not, you will be given a good education, fed properly, and you will be kept healthy as you grow into a fine young woman. Mito didn't even address the slave part. It will be hard at first, but I promise, we are the finest school for senjutsu and medicine in the world. Even my own daughter, grandchild, has surpassed me and become the world's best doctor. We will test your aptitude for medicine and healing, but for now you will focus on senjutsu, train that body to become a shield for the family. This is your family now. My family? Kaneko asked as she looked at her. Yes, your family. This school is a family. We have our teachers travel the world to bring us those with potential for medicine or senjutsu, those with no family of their own. Of course, you are the first person we needed to buy in order to get you here, but alas, your status means little. Everyone seems so happy here. Kaneko thought as she looked at the fellow students who she passed in the halls. She noticed that there was nobody of high school age attending the school though. Here at the Senju Academy, we go by the motto. The entire school is our family, and so while you attend this school, you are family. These are your brothers and sisters, your teachers are you aunts and uncles, and I am your mother. So is Naruto? Kaneko started to ask. Naruto is my second cousin's grandchild by blood, but I adopted him when his parents passed away. We share blood, though it is distant. We are both members of the Uzumaki clan. I even raised his mother when she was a child. Mito spoke with her stern look being replaced with a genuine smile, a soft and loving motherly smile as she spoke of that situation. Back straight, shoulders relaxed but not slouched. Mito became stern again and corrected Kaneko's posture. She led Kaneko towards the gym. When the gym was opened up, she saw everyone running around the gym while carrying weights in their hands. The older students were wearing weighted vests and ankle weights to go with it. Kaneko saw all of the students, both male and female, had attractive bodies. They took great care of themselves, though clearly it was not completely by choice. Mito took the top of her kimono off. Kaneko looked at her and saw the woman had a very athletic body for her age. She didn't have any abs, but she had clear muscle and definition to her body, with a proper layer of fat. Remember Kaneko, your body needs not only muscle, but fat as well. We expect our students to maintain model-level physiques at all time. Mito had the body to back up what she was saying as well. For a man, that means a body fat percentage of 6 to 7%, and for a woman, it means between 15 and 17%. Mito explained why despite being athletic, her abs and muscles didn't stick out as much as the men's muscles did. Why can't it be lower? Kaneko asked. She wanted to get even more fit than the rest. Their body needs fat to get stronger and grow as well, so a proper diet and workout are both required to maintain your body at its best. Mito ran at a slow pace so that Kaneko could keep up with her. She looked over and saw Naruto was running with Hashirama. The two of them were keeping pace in front of the others. Even teachers would participate in the school's required morning workouts. Kaneko even saw various yokai students as well, who were working out in their true forms and not just their human forms. She summoned forth both her cat ears and tail, and her speed increased enough that Mito allowed herself to speed up slightly to keep ahead of her. After the workout, Kaneko felt like she was dying. Whenever she had been about to puke, Mito forced her to stop and rest until her stomach settled before she made her get back to her physical education. Kaneko saw the rest of the students were sweating and out of breath, but they all seemed in much better condition than her. Mito clapped her hands together and everyone started to head towards the locker rooms in order to shower. Now to clean your body, then while I use the sauna, you will enjoy an ice bath. Your body is not ready for the sauna cycle yet. Mito grabbed the back of her kimono and started to drag Kaneko towards the showers. Naya. Ice bath. That sounded like a nightmare. The senjutsu lessons were not hard for Kaneko. She was a nekashu, who were natural-born prodigies at the sage arts that were senjutsu. The lessons were pretty easy anyway, considering that the lesson would start with taking a mud bath, washing the mud off in a river, before sitting and meditating on grass and letting sunlight kiss her skin. Then there were the theory lessons, which were harder than the other part of senjutsu where she just did mostly nothing. Though, for an old man, Hashirama was built like truck. He was a healthy old man. She got extra lessons from Hashirama after the rest of the class was dismissed, with would seem like favoritism at first. Now remember, search deep inside your soul for power. Use your senjutsu to sense the base of your life force. Hashirama was teaching her how to search for her tauki within herself and pull it out to enhance her physical abilities. It was a topic that was taught to the students who had advanced beyond the rest of their classmates. She was the only young girl being taught any of this and she had only been studying for 6 months. 6 months changed her. She was no longer under the weight she was supposed to be and she put up a little bit of muscle to go with the small amount of fat she gained. In 6 months, she got used to the morning workouts since they weren't that hard if she was being honest. She had just been very out of shape when she started and now she was mostly caught up with the other boys in the age group above her thanks to her yokai heritage. She had already surpassed the girls in her age group but that wasn't exactly what her goal was. She loved this life. All of her meals were delicious and she got to eat as much as she wanted and then more, and did she mention her meals were absolutely delicious. They were delicious and the nutrition was balanced and tailor-made for a girl her age and size. Clearly the cafeteria workers were earning their salary because they put so much effort into all of the meals that all of the students would eat. Not just her food, but the teachers would eat at the same tables as the students. Her life force had gotten stronger since attending this school. Her dreams were nicer, much nicer than before. She got great sleep each and every one night, though she was never allowed to oversleep. That was because she was forced to wake up a little earlier than other students so that she could do her own duty and go wake up the boy who brought her here. Grandfather. Father Hashirama corrected when a young woman walked in and Kaneko turned her head to look at the woman. The FFFFFT Kaneko gagged on her breath. Those were massive, absolutely massive. The woman had clear resemblance to Mito, but her hair was blonde in color. Also, unlike Mito's modest chest size, this woman had so big that she was sure that even the most seductive and devils and fallen angels would be jealous of their sheer mass. I need help with his treatment. Okay Tsunade. Hashirama put his shirt back on and stood up with a more serious face. This is the slave girl. Tsunade grabbed Kaneko by the shoulder and forced her to her feet. Tsunade seemed to judge Kaneko with a more critical eye. She's a runt. Tsunade finished her judgment. Kaneko puffed up in annoyance. Malnutrition when she was younger, we're trying to fix what we can. Sadly, part of her growth will always be a little stunted. Kaneko, this is my daughter Tsunade, she is Naruto's older sister. Hashirama introduced Tsunade to Kaneko. The two females locked eyes for a moment, with Tsunade leaning down and pushing her forehead up against Kaneko's smaller forehead. Kaneko started to stare into that cleavage though. They were too huge for even a girl like her not to stare at. At the treatment room, Kaneko watched as her owner was on a table. He had a white towel over his eyes and his waist to hide his privates, but what Kaneko saw that was more important was the black mark that spread over most of his body. It emerged from his stomach and spread out over most of his body, like veins, but in the form of black markings. The parts not covered by those markings were covered in sweat and he was breathing heavily. Tsunade's hands were glowing green as she placed them over his stomach. Hashirama wasn't doing anything other than gently rubbing his palm against the top of Naruto's head, just maintaining contact and soothingly whispering to Naruto. Mito was waiting outside. He trained too hard, that boy. Mito seemed angered by what was going on. What is happening to him? Kaneko's question had worry to it. If Naruto died, if her master died, then part of her truly worried that she would be sent away from the school. Just as much of her that was worried about being sent away was worried about his actual health and safety though. He had been a kind master to her for 6 months now. He trained too hard and he accidentally used the cursed power in him. That evil power, that tainted foul malicious power. Mito cursed into her hand and there was genuine anger in her voice. Kaneko turned her head back towards the table, where the black markings were starting to recede back into Naruto's stomach, traveling backwards towards their point of origin. We want him to learn my husband's unique arts to help stop this curse. Mito sighed in relief when the markings completely vanished back into the mark on his stomach. Then the mark itself faded into his skin. Kaneko watched silently before she realized that she really didn't understand what was going on all that much. She watched as Naruto sat up and panted, his hand going to his stomach and grabbing at his developing abs with a shaking grip. "Stop trying to get stronger, brat, just become a doctor like me," Tsunade stated as she flicked Naruto's forehead with an affectionate scowl across her mouth. She was clearly worried for him, but the fact was that she didn't seem to be able to easily show it. Tsunade walked towards Kaneko before she leaned down and stared into the girl's eyes again. "Since you belong to him, you better not let anything bad happen to my little brother," Tsunade threatened in a very small voice. Kaneko gulped but nodded her head. Mito slapped the back of Tsunade's head. "Control yourself, child. I'm over 50 years old, I'm not a child," Tsunade shouted back at her grandmother while holding the back of her head in shock. Kaneko was taken back in shock when she looked at Tsunade, who seemed like she was in her early 20s in age by physical appearance. She smelled human as could be, which made her age even more shocking. "You, girl, get stronger and work on your purification power and your senjutsu skills more." Tsunade pointed at Kaneko with blushing red cheeks since she was embarrassed to be called out by her grandmother in front of the woman who she was trying to threaten. Her words weren't as scary to Kaneko this time, who took her away from Tsunade and looked towards Naruto, who was getting dressed. "How are we supposed to trust you to get used to society if you keep pushing yourself so hard?" Mito spoke to Naruto as he walked by them. Naruto just rubbed the back of his head. Kaneko was confused. "Get used to society? This school doesn't have anyone of high school age. When students get to that age, they are supposed to go to a regular high school. So that we can get social experience with others and get used to how the real world is," Naruto explained to Kaneko. The fact was that just staying in this paradise of a well-managed school didn't give a person real experience with those outside the school. For human students, it means going to a human school, and for supernatural students, it means getting adjusted to a mixed human supernatural school, Naruto explained to Kaneko. "But I like it here. Your master will become a future headmaster of this school like my husband, so he must build social skills. Of course that means you will go with him as he acquires those social skills," Mito lectured Kaneko, who lowered her head at the thought of leaving the school. She had only been there for 6 months, but she liked it so much. Hashirama grabbed the top of her head and he stopped Naruto by grabbing his head as well. "Yep, this is my successor right here and I'm going to drill senjutsu right into this empty head," Hashirama gestured to the two. Tsunade looked at Kaneko before she scoffed slightly and started to walk off. Tsunade was gone moments later. "Ignore her, well she's the world's best doctor, she failed to even grasp the basics of senjutsu. She had no talent for it at all, and she had no talent for learning my wood arts either." Hashirama saw Kaneko look down. He grinned at how jealous Tsunade seemed to be because even though she was his biological granddaughter, it didn't mean she had a talent for the same things he was talented at. "She's jealous of young girls with a talent for what she lacks, she doesn't hate you though. If anything, she wants you to succeed, she's just being a tsundere about it," Hashirama explained. Naruto laughed under his breath. "Tsundere Tsunade fits with the memories I have of the other Tsunade." Naruto could not help himself but to think of the Tsunade from his growing memories of the other world. Then again, he was getting lessons from the first Hokage on this world senjutsu and his wood arts that he invented. He actually had a form of a family in this world. Kaneko was smacked on the butt. "Straighten out your back, girl." Mito lectured Kaneko about her posture starting to slip again and Kaneko stood up straight. She had a lot of work to do. Clang. Kaneko watched as a short elderly man took a hammer white hot metal and slammed it with enough force to send a small shockwave through the entire room they were in. Ears. Kaneko was sitting mostly naked but wearing black bloomers and black thigh-high socks. She had just had her measurements taken from her, which involved stripping herself naked to do. The elderly man was the janitor for the entire school, and though he was a janitor, that didn't mean he didn't have more responsibilities. For starters, he was a student who had learned some aspects of senjutsu. He had murdered a previous White Dragon Emperor. Kaneko saw blue gems were on the table next to the workstation because despite being a janitor, this man was a talented smith. She saw an armored arm's worth of armor that would only cover her right arm. It was pure white with gold trim to it, with no armor over the hand of the arm, just the shoulder and arm itself. There was also a white piece of armor with more gold trim that had a blue gems inserted into it that was supposed to fit on the back of her head. "Nearly 40 years ago, I saw the Red and White Dragon Emperors fighting, and I killed the White Dragon Emperor. The armor he was wearing has been a prized piece of my collection." Hiruzen Sarutobi spoke as he bashed the piece of metal that would form the armor for her legs. He sucked in his breath before he spewed white hot fire against the metal he was working with. "Fire, water, earth, wind, and lightning, I have mastered these elements." Hiruzen showed that the hammer he was using had a strong coating of lightning. When he slammed the hammer, he used earth magic to manipulate the dragon-scale metal. He spewed wind over the metal, and she covered her face when the heat got even more intense, and the sparks flew in greater numbers when he worked on pounding it into shape with both his strength and his magical power. He grabbed a brown leather and stretched it with his arms, and he spewed water at the leg pieces he had just finished off. He attached a leather strap to the wide arm armor and started to run the pieces between his hands to truly attach them. He grabbed a second piece of leather that would be used as a breast covering for Kaneko to hide her nipples and about half of her dot. He even added a black cat head decoration to the middle of it. "Thank you." Kaneko wrapped the leather strap around her and tied it in the back so she could stop covering her modest chest with her hands. Her body was on the smaller side, but she had a model-level figure with a pear-shaped body. Her years of training under Mito and Hashirama had given her a toned body, but she had enough fat so that her body looked quite soft and seductive. She had enough meat on her that she was not quite petite enough to be mistaken for a child, and her were on the size of bigger B cup to a small C cup. She had filled out in the right ways, as Mito would say. She was on the short side, but her sister was also short, so it made sense. If she remembered correctly, her sister was shorter than the average woman as well. Kaneko looked down at her butt and her crotch because she could feel how tight the black bloomers were digging into her body. She readjusted herself to get rid of the visible camel toe that was showing. No problem, use this armor wisely. Hiruzen watched as she fitted her right arm into the armor and put a black fingerless glove on. She looked at the nails that she had sharpened her nails, but she kept them at an easy-to-manage length. Her nails were her weapon, her nekashu sharpened claws that she could enhance with her tauki. He turned around and started to work on the next piece of equipment. Kaneko stood up as he passed freshly cooled leg armor to her and she slipped her legs into them. She saw that there were blue gems inserted into the armor in front of her thighs and shins. The armor only came up to the middle of her thighs. She stood up and saw that the feet of the armor were shaped similar to high heels and that they gave her a lot of height. They ended in sharp points and the legs had thicker armor. Her armor was sexy, for sure. No chest armor. Kaneko saw her waist, stomach, and her entire torso were completely exposed. She placed the headpiece and it only covered the back of her head and part of her cheekbones. Her armor was not focused on defense. That is what a shield is for. Covering your entire body with armor is useless if it slows you down. So I'm only making enough armor to cover the spots a shield can't easily protect, and obviously you need to have your attacking arm covered. Also, you're a woman. Hiruzen stated as a matter of fact. Kaneko swung her arm a few times, as if she were swinging her claws at a person, while Hiruzen started to work on the shield she would wield with her left arm. She would not wear much armor on her left arm, it would seem, so that she could move her shield faster. Only a bracer that her shield would attach to, and that was it. I'm a woman. But you know why female armor shows off there and why they wear skirts into battle more often? Hiruzen questioned her. I don't know. Survival, as a woman, less armor will help you survive against intelligent enemies better. True, against wild animals more armor is better, but as a woman, your vagina is the best piece of armor you could ever own when you fight a man that is stronger than you. Hiruzen stated in a tone that suggested that he had experience with it. Simple, if an enemy wants to have sex with you, they aren't as likely to kill you. Anyway, you have a small build. Armor just makes you easier to hit the more you wear. Hiruzen slightly horrified her with his words. Only slightly, since while horrible for him to say that her getting raped would help keep her alive, she could see the sadness in his eyes when he said it. He trimmed the shield he was working on with gold as well and started to pound two perfectly round gems into the front of the shield. He was making her shield look like a cute cat head with blue eyes. Kaneko looked down at herself in her armor as she slipped the brace on her left arm and she stood up enough to see that she was taller thanks to the legs of the armor. She walked around to get used to how she needed to walk around with a weird way the legs were shaped. He continued to work on her shield though. This shield will have the power to divide the strengths of attacks that hit it up to 2 times per attack. As long as you use this shield to block, all attacks that you block with it will only be 1/4 as strong. The energy from those attacks will also increase the strength of the armor. Hiruzen continued to work on the shield, explaining the power to her. So only use the shield to block attacks that you're strong enough to handle at 1/4 of the power. Hiruzen told her. So, I get stronger the more I block. No, you are not the White Dragon Emperor, so your strength will not increase. The armor protecting you will become stronger and it will use the energy to heal itself. Of course, when the energy becomes too much for the armor to handle, it will release it from those exhaust ports in the shoulder. Hiruzen showed the golden circles in the shoulder of her right arm armor. The shoulder guard that was shaped like a cat's head with 2 blue gem eyes. Can these leather straps be a little looser? Kaneko asked. Her were being pushed against really tightly, which was causing them to try and spill out of the top and bottom of the strap. It made her seem smaller, but at the same time it made them look even softer. No, the shield is done. Hiruzen finished the cat face shield, and while it was big enough to cover her torso with it, it was rounded enough that the edges could be used as a makeshift weapon if need be. He gave her the shield, and she attached it to the brace on her left arm. He pointed to the black cat head between her, and he touched the center of it. Her body glowed. Then her armor glowed, and her armor was sucked inside of the black decoration. Like magic, the armor vanished, even her black socks and her bloomers were sucked up, leaving her completely naked and covering herself. The cat decoration fell to the floor, and Hiruzen picked it up and placed it back in her hair to match the decoration on the other side of her head. He still had metal left over. Kaneko's cheeks were pink as she moved over to her school uniform and quickly started to get dressed because she was naked in front of the school janitor. Yes, she had been naked for him to get her measurements, but she had worn her bloomers. You saw nothing. I bonded the armor to your soul until you learn how to summon the armor. You can use that decoration to easily summon it. Just place it between your and think of something you wish to protect. Hiruzen took the leftovers that he didn't use for her armor. Once you need more strength, come back to me and I'll upgrade the legs of your armor. Right now, you need a strong defense. I won't give you an offensive weapon until you learn more. Hiruzen got no arguments from her. Thank you. Kaneko bowed. Thank me by protecting my boy. Hiruzen stated, referring to her owner. Kaneko nodded her head because that didn't need to be stated to her. Nice body, too bad I'm not way younger. Naruto is a lucky boy, he can do whatever he wants to this lass. Hiruzen could only be happy. He became a blacksmith so that he could see hot, young, naked female warriors asking him to make armor for them. Warriors that kept their bodies up to model standards. If Kaneko were taller than she was, she would have not the body of a model, but she would be nearly at the level of a supermodel. Sadly, it was only her height that kept her from being classified as a supermodel. This is where you were. Hiruzen went back to work while Kaneko saw Naruto enter the room and her lips formed a smile when she saw him. She rushed to his side. You need me? No, I just wanted to tell him that there is a mess in the cafeteria. Naruto looked at Hiruzen, who nodded his head and grabbed his cleaning supplies. The heat of the room was intense and Naruto raised an eyebrow at the fact that Hiruzen had been smithing. He looked at Kaneko with a raised eyebrow. Did you ask him to make you something? Naruto questioned her. She nodded. Just some armor. Cool sexy armor? Naruto asked, and Kaneko looked at him as he gave Hiruzen a suspicious glance, with the elderly man realizing he could be in trouble. I asked for sexy armor, I'm a girl after all, you don't want to see my sexy armor. Kaneko gave Naruto a cute look, a sad look, and he looked away from Hiruzen while scratching his cheek. I'm your property so I just figured you would like me to be sexy. Kaneko did not want the man who made her great armor to be in trouble, but that didn't mean she was lying. Fine, he's not in trouble. Naruto didn't know how to respond to that. Thank you, master. Kaneko grabbed his hand and nuzzled it against her cheek before she got on the tips of her toes in order to lick his neck. I've got training with your grandfather to get ready for. Kaneko rushed off in excitement. Naruto just watched her go as his hand went to his wet neck. That girl is dangerous for my sanity, I so want to abuse my authority. Naruto had so many fantasies he would love to make Kaneko act out, but sadly, he knew that it was a dangerous slope. Acting on those desires could end up forcing Kaneko to do something she doesn't want to do, or maybe it would just make him desire to do more extreme things to Kaneko by using his power over her. Acting on a desire made it even easier to act on the desire again, and eventually he would seek out even more extreme desires. That was human nature after all. Kaneko was sad. Naruto was no longer at the same school as her, since he was a year older than her, he left to go to a human school before her. It was enough that Ears had not stood in happiness since he had left, not counting when he would come and visit for the weekend. She spent time with Hashirama during and after her senjutsu lessons, and while Mito was nice, she was stricter than Hashirama was. Spending time with Mito would usually lead to more studying for her, and while it benefited her to learn more, it didn't make for much fun. Like today's senjutsu lesson. Hashirama made learning senjutsu more fun, and while his classes were extremely easy, it was because there was no rush to learn. Students who studied senjutsu started their training very young and spent several years to get a good grasp of the basics. By the time they had their grasp of the basics, they would go to a human high school for a few years in order to get more balance in their lives, and after that they would come back for their advanced senjutsu lessons. In Mito's core study classes, the classes were boring but easy to understand, which made learning them simple. I call this game Senjutsu Ball. These basketballs are each filled with elemental-based senjutsu power. We will be breaking into teams of 2 and get the right balls into the right hoops. Hashirama stated as he showed 5 basketballs. There were 10 hoops and each of them were labeled with a different elemental affinity. Fire, wind, lightning, earth, and water. Kaneko sensed the balls and saw that each of the 5 balls corresponded with a different element. She looked around and saw everyone was looking at the balls to sense which one went to which hoop, even though all of the balls on the outside looked perfectly the same. She could guess that the point of the lesson was just to hone the senjutsu ability to read kai, sense it, and hone their ability to understand the properties of the flow they were reading it while in the heat of physical activity and under light stress. Educational, but fun. With Naruto, kind of weird not having Kaneko here. Naruto thought as he sat down for lunch at a family diner. He was in the middle of his first few months in his new school, just a regular human school. It was also his day off from helping to go and recruit more potential for the Senju school. Naruto felt like he was being watched though, and he had felt that feeling for several hours. He could sense that whoever was watching him was close by, but instead of using senjutsu to check and alert his possible enemy to the fact he was onto them, he just let them watch him and waited for the right moment. If they meant him no harm, they would eventually go away on their own, and if they did mean him harm, then eventually they would attack him anyway. There was no reason to risk other people by jumping into action. "Hello Uzumaki Naruto, it has been a while." Naruto turned his head. "Do I know you?" Naruto asked when he saw a red-haired man with a beautiful brown-haired woman. Honestly though, both of them were unnaturally beautiful. He could tell from a glance they were not human, that much was for sure. They wore fancy clothes to a family diner, clothes of a higher quality than most likely every person in the city. "Zeodicus Gremory and my wife, Benelana Gremory, we were among the devils who you paid 10 yen to several years ago. Okay?" Naruto asked as the man and woman sat down at the same table as him. The two of them looked at the homework that he was doing, and he raised an eyebrow. He was now more on guard since they introduced themselves to him using that as their intro, since it already placed them in a position to be on bad terms. "I'm not apologizing or paying you any more money," Naruto stated. The man smiled serenely. "No need, if anything, that move you pulled was quite the learning experience. Since we stopped the general practice of taking human souls, your stunt reminded us about the fine print of contracts." Zeodicus spoke casually enough, even as he flagged down the waitress and ordered himself a steak meal. His wife just ordered herself a steak and salad meal, while Naruto saw his chance. He ordered himself 2 steak meals. "You would be well suited to becoming a devil, which is why I wish to offer you a chance to join my peerage," Benelana stated as she made the offer to him. She was rather abrupt with her offer, but it got straight to the point. "You would rise through the ranks quickly and would be quite popular," Benelana stated as she explained a good point. What? You're a crafty young man, you know how to swindle even a devil." Your words had forced those who wished to punish Kuroka to do an investigation, and we learned of illegal experiments because of it. What? Kuroka's previous master had been involved with some very serious, very illegal experiments. Thanks to you, we were all forced to investigate Kuroka's crimes to save face. Zeodicus spoke to Naruto with respect. Naruto had no clue what was happening. "So? You see, many of us, myself included, were quite annoyed by the way you tricked us. So, we wanted to prove Kuroka was guilty of her crimes in order to score a win against you. We discovered that Kuroka did indeed kill her master to protect her sister. She has been cleared of treason, thanks to your bullshitting us." Zeodicus had been one of the devils who had declared on the TV that Kuroka had been cleared of the crimes she was accused of. Then Alana was given her food first and started with the salad. "Yes, you humiliated our species a second time. You exposed the corruption we didn't even know about, and now, thanks to the seriousness of the crimes her former master committed, there has been quite the political shift," Benelana explained smoothly, calmly, to Naruto. Her words were smooth, and she had a very naturally sexy voice to say the least. Naruto didn't even know what was happening. What? "Thanks to you tricking us and forcing us to investigate Kuroka, the humiliation we faced because of your actions doubled after all. The public perception was that it was you who exposed Kuroka's master, despite you having no part in the investigation. It was your words that sparked the investigation, and we were forced to examine multiple other families," Zeodicus stated with a flinch. Naruto still didn't quite understand what he did. "The fair treatment of our slaves. Kuroka was a slave to her master, so she could never go public with her treatment. Nobody would believe her. She was going to be killed, her younger sister who was innocent was going to be killed for self-defense against a master who treated them poorly," Benelana stated. Kuroka's master had been the starting point. When it was revealed to the entire underworld that Shirin was going to be put to death, an innocent girl, for the fact her sister killed her master to defend her, it left a bad taste in the mouths of many young devils. Just to save face and to prove that the treatment of their slaves was just and fair, more investigations started. So, to prove that Kuroka's master was a rare case of a master abusing their peerage, we sparked more investigations. We wanted to prove that Kuroka's case was extremely rare, until our investigations proved that several of our more esteemed devils were what is a polite way," Venelana continued. "Rape. They were raping humans, breaking them, and then brainwashing them to join their peerages. There were even devils who were kidnapping nuns. The same devil had been plotting against an active member of the church, our enemy." Zeodicus saw Naruto's hand grip tightly around the knife he was using to cut his steak. He could see that his words had an effect on Naruto, and he looked at the boy in the face. The vein on his forehead was throbbing, showing that Naruto was filled with fury that he was barely holding back. Zeodicus was impressed with how angry Naruto was getting for complete strangers. Genuine empathy was a rare trait. We are enemies with church and heaven, which means one of our own planned to rape and enslave our enemies during a very tense stalemate. Naturally, we were forced to issue a very painful apology to the church. It was rather humiliating for us to admit that we never noticed what was happening among our own ranks. Zeodicus sighed at the massive headache. He reached inside of his suit and pulled out a necklace. It was a 10-yen coin. You humiliated 100 devils by giving us a 10-yen coin each, and then because of our humiliation, you made us humiliate ourselves 3 more times. Zeodicus showed off his necklace and he gestured to his wife. She reached inside of her dress between her and pulled out a matching necklace. The two of them had taken the coins given to them and turned them into necklaces so that they could wear their humiliation around their necks. You, who humiliated us, you are something of a hero to young devils. You tricked several generations and then forced us to try and save face, only to save even more humiliation. Time and time again for several years, we all tried our best to make the public forget our humiliation, but it always resulted in more pain for us. Then Alana looked at the coin she was holding with both hatred and respect. They treated their servants well. Instead of treating them like slaves, they were treated like either parts of the family or like regular maids and butlers. The Gremory family was famed for their kindness, so they never noticed just how horrible the other devils treated their property before. To say that they were appalled would be an understatement. So why would any of this convince me to become a slave to a devil then? Naruto asked Alana, since that was her original offer. She smiled. Your actions on that day have humiliated our species time and time again, humiliation that we will never live down. To the low and middle class you are a hero. You don't understand how positive the impact you had on their lives has been. In our desire to make up for our humiliation, we have been forced to make laws to protect our low class. All of the forced changes to our society. Zeodicus took a deep breath. His wife was still smiling, but her smile was getting strained. It was hard for them to admit, even if they liked every change that had happened. We were forced to cancel our daughter's engagement because of you. Our daughter's fiancé, when it was his turn to be investigated on how he treated his peerage, he was charged with several crimes he had to pay heavy fines for. Zeodicus wished he could smoke right now. Riser Phoenix had been forced to pay many fines due to how he put his peerage through harsh training to get them stronger and the way he sacrificed them during raiding games with no concern to their well-being. His rough treatment of them had resulted in several fines, and the fact that several of his peerage members had been pre-teens when they joined his peerage, and Riser was famous for having sex with his peerage, had led to a lot of labels being thrown at Riser. They could not allow their daughter to marry him. Riser had not gone to jail, but he had been forced to pay fines for the rough treatment of his peerage, and since they could not prove he had sex with pre-teens, he faced no fines for that. Still, the rough treatment of his peerage combined with the way the public viewed him in a negative light and the way the highest class of their society hated the fact that those like Riser proved the points against them correct. Before, Riser was looked on as a very popular, powerful, and charismatic young devil by many of their kind, with many raiding game wins, and the fact that he was extremely respectful to higher-ranking devils. Now though, they could not allow their daughter to marry a man who would only make their entire family look bad. If they forced their daughter to marry a man with a horrible reputation, then their own reputation would be ruined. They were among the few families who had their reputations improve after their investigations. Thanks to Rias saving the lives of her knight, bishop and queen, the investigation into her peerage had boosted the image of how they treated them. The fact that neither he nor his wife had ever abused their peerages helped to maintain that image. They could not allow that boost to their family image be wasted by forcing their daughter to marry somebody who had been forced to pay fines and now had a worse reputation. Good for her. Naruto stated, since he still didn't see how any of this related to him. 1. He bought Kaneko and tricked the devils. 2. To save face, they investigated Kuroka's dead master to prove her guilt. 3. They learned Kuroka's master had done illegal experiments, which humiliated them further. 4. They investigated how other families treated their slaves to prove that Kuroka's master was rare. 5. They discovered that one of their own was plotting to rape more nuns to add to their mind-broken slaves, which humiliated them further, which could threaten war between hell and heaven. 6. They were forced to try and save face by improving the treatment of the lower classes. 7. Because of that humiliation, they had to investigate more clans, one of which was the fiancé of the Gremory clan's daughter. 8. The investigation into him showed him mistreating his peerage, which meant he had to pay fines, which lowered his status. 9. They broke off the engagement between the man and their daughter. How did that cause them to want him? We want you to join our family. You are exceptional. You are popular among young devils and even more popular among the low and middle class of our society. You humiliated us, and then because of our pride we humiliated ourselves several more times. Ziotica spoke with a light in his eyes. You would make an exceptional devil if anything, the role of demon suits you more than human. Naruto hummed with a raised eyebrow. He had never been called a demon in such a positive way before, usually it was always given a negative feeling. He didn't like being compared to a demon that much, but the way they were describing it sounded like a compliment. Naruto finished eating first. Since he talked less than everyone else while he ate, he just didn't have the same distractions as the others had. Join your family, become your slave? Naruto asked as he pointed to Venelana. He grinned at her. He was curious as to her answer. The formality, you would be treated as if you were a son of our family, of course. If you were to become a devil, I see no future in which you don't become rich, powerful, famous, and surrounded by a harem of your choosing and easy life. Venelana, a woman, made the offer. Naruto grinned wider. Is that all? We also offer an exceptional education at our school. You see, we own the Kuo school. We can get you enrolled there. It is a place where you can forge connections, strong bonds with others in the supernatural world. Our daughter attends school there, in her second year. I'm sure you would enjoy going to school with her. Zioticus reached into his inner pocket and took out a picture. They tried to play to his greed. Now to play to his lust. It was a picture of their daughter, in the bath with her mother, a hot springs bath. Their daughter was absolutely stunning, and Naruto looked at the women in front of him. He saw that she was naked in the picture and showed no hesitation in having the picture shown to him. Oh whoops honey, that is the wrong picture. Venelana was a good actor at least. She feigned that she cared if she was seen naked or if her daughter was seen. She pulled the picture away from her husband and presented a different picture of their daughter in her school uniform. Men tend to think less rationally when you rile up their lust. Well, she's beautiful, but I've never met her. I would need to go to Kuo in order to meet her and make a better decision. Naruto stated. Done, we can transfer you to our school tomorrow. Sounds good, I look forward to meeting her and I'll think over your offer then. Naruto stated as he got up and left. Ziotica smiled. We got him. Zioticus and Venelana stated in unison. The waitress came with the check and the two of them looked at it. They blinked before the red-haired man started to laugh under his breath when he realized that they had been played. The check was barely any money at all compared to their wealth, but the fact remained that Naruto had left them the check without so much as mentioning it to them. He smoothly transitioned into leaving the diner without so much as raising their eyebrows. He truly was too devilish to be a human. A mistake that they wanted to correct. The guy who freed her from her marriage. He made Rias Gremory nervous because of the simple fact he was the person her generation had the most respect for. She was older than him by a full year, but the fact was when he was even younger, he tricked a room full of mature devils. It was an amazing feat, and then there was the fact that his trick had snowballed into the amazing things that had a direct effect on her own life. She was no longer to be married to Riser, being the best part. Rias was logical, so she knew that he didn't do what he did to save her. He didn't even know that she existed when he saved the catgirl that day, but even knowing full well that his actions were not done for her benefit, she felt thankful. She had a deep respect for the devilish boy known as Uzumaki. What a weirdo, he writes his last name in hiragana, but his given name is katakana. Her queen saw Naruto's written name, written by his own hand even. She had a small book in her hand and a smile on her face. The name was on a page, next to a picture that had been taken the day that Naruto had tricked the adult devils. She took the notebook from her. How did you work up the courage to get his autograph like this? Rias looked at the signature, done in messy handwriting. Not only did Naruto not write his full name in one form of writing, but he also spelled the Naruto in his name by not using kanji, so his name had no true meaning behind it other than being his name. Rias was beautiful. She had a body shape that even supermodels would kill for, and it was the type of body that she had to put almost no effort into. She did her basic training every day, a morning workout, but that was about it. She had large, full that had ample weight to them. A genetic gift from the Bale side of her bloodline and from the Gremory side, but more so the Bale. The Keno, well shorter than her, had a figure that rivaled her own and exceeded her in some specific areas. I guess it only makes sense that I should invite him to join the club. Rias passed the notebook back to Akeno. She gave off an aura of confidence because she knew in her heart that he would never reject a kind offer from her to simply spend some time together. He knew of the supernatural, so having him in her club would break no secrets. Also, why did you ask for his autograph? Rias asked. Akeno smiled. To make you jealous, of course. Of course you did. Rias sighed as she laid back. Akeno was making a move to get closer, not out of any feelings to actually get to know him, but to get under her skin. She knew that she was interested in becoming friends with Naruto. The simple matter was that she wanted to get a move on it first. Boys his age were known for their lust and typically could be easily charmed by a seductive figure. Then it would be a matter of time before he ignored other girls in favor of whoever the first seductress to get to him. Months later, I wonder when she's going to make a move. Naruto thought to himself as he watched Rias move out of his vision as he was walking away from the school. She hung out in the old school building where the orc was located. The occult research club, though it only had 3 members at the moment. The school prince, a first-year like himself in his class, named Yudo, and both Rias and Akeno were known as the school beauties. He wondered why she hadn't talked to him since she seemed like she wanted to. It was not hard to notice that every day he left school, she would watch him go from her clubroom. Naruto looked towards the window and he waved at it and his eyes made contact with her eyes. He was sure that her parents told her to convince him to join their family. She must be plotting her first move. With Rias, this is harder than I thought. It would seem so. Akeno was honestly surprised by how hard Rias was trying and failing to work up the ability to just go and say hello to Naruto. She had been making plots and plans for literal months now, only to lose the courage each time she tried something. Rias leaned her forehead against the wall. I want to make a great first impression on him, but every time I get close, I get nervous. Rias felt her heart pounding in her chest from excitement. For several years before she started attending school with him, she had watched recordings and clips from when he tricked her species. She wore a 10 yen coin that her brother gave her around her neck because there were only 100 of those coins that Naruto originally passed around. Among devils, those coins went for a lot of money, and to have a coin was considered the height of cool in her generation. You're not the type to get nervous like this about a boy. Akeno had never seen Rias as anxious. Rias had a very low opinion of men in general, but for her to get nervous around a boy was teasing material that she would use once Rias got her confidence back up. They say never meet your idols. I'm just worried about what he will be like and it gets me nervous. I have this image of him in my head. Rias placed a finger to the side of her head, crossing her other arm under her chest. It was also true that she pretty much viewed all men with a neutral opinion of them unless they came across to her as unpleasant. I wish I knew his hobbies, something to bond with him over to break the ice. Rias started to rub the sides of her head. If they had similar hobbies, then she could make it so that they happened to meet while shopping for something involving their hobbies. Her hobbies were simple, she liked to garden and work with her hands by making things, and she loved both reading and video games. Her favorite hobby might be shopping in general, followed by reading, and then gardening. Well, his hobbies are. Akeno started before Rias put a finger to her lips. Don't tell me so suddenly, and why do you know his hobbies? Rias asked Akeno with her eyebrows raising up before lowering in suspicion. Akeno smiled. I asked him. He is very forthcoming with his personal information. He is very easy to talk to. Akeno stated. That made Rias feel worse. Akeno wasn't even that good at dealing with me, much more liking to ignore them completely. So, he and you must have shared some hobbies. Rias could tell that Naruto and Akeno would have had to share hobbies if he was easy to talk to. Rias knew what Akeno's hobbies were, which meant that Naruto either liked to shop or he liked to research food. False, we don't share any hobbies. I just like the fact that he always seems to smile for people. It is like his natural expression is a smile. Akeno stated, and Rias was alarmed by the way that Akeno phrased that. Men who always smiled. Akeno's type. So what are his hobbies? Rias turned away from Akeno, deciding that she needed to hurry up. Akeno was already having conversations with Naruto, and it would only be a matter of time before she made a big move on him. He likes to murder puppies. His hobbies are gardening, and he likes to try different types of ramen. Akeno sighed when Rias just stared at her in a show of how she was not amused by the joke. Akeno was smiling, even if her joke didn't get the reaction that she was going for. His energy flow is very unique, and honestly I believe that if an angel and a devil had a child he would be that. Akeno explained. What do you mean? Rias raised an eyebrow. You'll understand when you talk to him, so go on, hurry up and talk to him. Akeno, for all her teasing, still encouraged Rias to make a move. She didn't give away any spoilers for what Rias should expect when she actually talked to Naruto. You know how girls our age like the whole bad boy look, blonde hair, blue eyes, and a nice body. If you don't hurry up, some human girl will scoop him up and then I won't be able to hold myself back. Akeno pushed Rias further and further. With Naruto, school wasn't so bad. The more of his memories he got back, the more he realized he liked this world. Naruto smiled as he walked down the peaceful streets. No attacks, just this peaceful air. There isn't danger around every corner. High school is boring, but peaceful. The humans of this world are weak, but that is a good thing. Naruto watched people as he walked. He couldn't help but see the peace of this world, the general peace that people could go about in their daily lives, as a great thing. In the shinobi world, every day could be your last. War could break out at any given moment, for any reason at all, and entire villages could be wiped out in the middle of the night. No matter how relaxed of a ninja you were always aware of the fact that things were only peaceful on the surface. Naruto saw these normal people as a good thing. Their ignorance of the supernatural world was a good thing as well, and it allowed them to go about their peaceful lives. Ignorance was part of their bliss, and so long as they just lived their lives normally, most of them would die normal peaceful deaths. This was what humans should strive for. A peaceful world. Boring, but boring is pretty nice. Naruto smiled, intent on enjoying the peace of this world. He was not ignorant to the supernatural, but at the same time, he could appreciate this world's peace for what it was. Compared to his memories of the ninja world, he honestly much preferred this world and the humans here than the people of his memories world. Humans spent most of their time working to further their lives. His people had spent most of their time working towards ending the lives of others, to the point that the average lifespan of a person was less than 30 years old, and only the strongest would live to be past that age, unless they never saw combat. Hello, Uzumaki-kun here. Sorry, but I can't accept your confession. Naruto turned around and saw a girl, bowing and extending a letter to him. Not his first confession. You won't even consider it. I will consider it if you tell me what it is about me that you like. What are my hobbies, what do I like and dislike? If you can tell me that, I'll give you a chance. Naruto had been confessed to by several girls at this point. He had no issues with any of them, but he also didn't know any of them at all, so he couldn't respond to their feelings the way they wanted. The girl was cute this time, but being cute didn't mean anything to him. Oh, you like sports and dislike studying. Actually, I don't really care about sports, and studying doesn't bother me, I just hate how boring studying is. Naruto corrected her, willing to give her that much. Studying was boring, so he hated it, but as long as it was fun, then he didn't mind studying. When he was with Jiraiya, his memories showed that Jiraiya had made studying more fun. Kakashi made studying fun for him too by turning it from simple book learning into a physical activity. How about this, what are my hobbies, what are my fears? Naruto asked as he gave her more chances. She stepped back a little. I'm so sorry Uzumaki-kun. She ran off. Well dang, didn't mean to scare her off. Naruto had just wanted her to try and get to know him before she confessed. Invite him on a date or maybe just hang out. That was too bad because she really was very cute. If anything, he would have liked to get to know her. Then again, Kaneko would be pissed off. Naruto couldn't imagine Kaneko ever approving of a girl who confessed to him without knowing him. Then there was his granny Mito. That was a different story. He doubted she would approve of any girl but the best. Rias waited patiently. She was at a local shop, a shop that specialized in gardening and farming supplies. She had been plotting and waiting, and scheming was her forte. She had her familiar sneak into Naruto's house and spill the nutrients he used to water his houseplants with. She then had Akeno wait outside of Naruto's apartment and call her when he left to go get more. So she had her cutest appropriate clothes for such a thing. Slightly torn work jeans that were tied around her butt and a loose-fitting top that was cut off halfway between her jeans and her belly button. She showed off a seductive amount of skin and she knew that she would get a reaction from him. Naruto entered the store. Oh, sup. Naruto just raised a hand casually when he passed right by her and her only response was to raise her hand back. Naruto went straight to what he needed, grabbed it without even looking at anything else, not a single thing more. Just a casually greeting, followed by passing by her without so much as glancing at her. Rias was slightly frozen. What do I say? Rias thought, since she had no expected him to just greet her and then pass by her like that. She expected him to stop for a moment. Ah, Gremory-senpai, you like to garden too. Why yes, I do love it. Rias nodded to herself and she saw how that imaginary conversation played out in her hand. Rias blinked when she saw the blonde hair walk by her and she put extra emphasis on her butt as she bent over. She made it look like she was having trouble deciding between two different things. Naruto slowed down and twisted his neck a little to look at her when he heard her, but instead of being focused on her butt, he only stared at her butt for a brief moment before something else seemed to attract his attention. The FFFT, you might want to go look at yourself in the restroom. With that, Naruto turned and kept walking away. Rias blinked, not expecting that to be how that conversation, one-sided, went. She blinked and walked towards the restroom, attracting a lot of eyes as she did so. She didn't pay any real attention to the blushes and whispers that she got, since their eyes meant little to her. She just entered the restroom silently and she looked at herself. Beautiful. She turned around and looked at the mirror again, only for her cheeks to flush when she realized that her jeans were too tight on her butt. They had been tight enough that she didn't even notice the rip that went right down the butt of her jeans. That Rias looked at her jeans with her face flushing. She had been so into her own thoughts, she never noticed that she ripped her pants. Rias got her phone out and she called Akeno. She needed new pants. Days later, this time, her plan was different. Ramen. She paid a local ramen shop to host an event. The event was just to eat a very large, abnormally sized bowl of ramen. She had her own family chefs design the ramen bowl to make it look as appealing as possible. She then had the ramen chef hypnotized into mastering how to make the bowl himself without him realizing that he had not been the one to create the ramen himself. Ramen challenge: eat the Leviathan, win a free prize. According to Akeno, Naruto loved to eat ramen and would regularly go out of his way to find ramen shops and stalls in order to sample their ramen. This was a shop he had already been to before and Rias was confident. She had her familiar take a human form and made sure that Naruto got a promotional poster for the challenge. So this is the Leviathan. Seraphol Leviathan showed up and while Rias sighed that it wasn't Naruto, her familiar reported to her that Naruto was on his way. It would seem that Seraphol had heard of the ramen challenge featuring her title and decided to check it out. It was a professionally made ramen, so word had most likely spread from her family chefs to the Citri family chefs, who then allowed the rumor to spread to Seraphol herself. Thankfully, Seraphol didn't even notice her as she sat down, more concerned with the ramen. "I'll order the Leviathan," Seraphol cheerfully exclaimed. Humming up. "He's on his way." Akeno nearby whispered to her, even Yudo nodded his head. Casual. Since one-on-one seemed to be a challenge, she decided to make the atmosphere more casual by having her friends with her. That way if she failed to attract his attention, they could help her out in a normal casual way. She learned from how casual Naruto had been at her previous attempt. Naruto entered the shop. "Whoa, this is huge." Seraphol shouted at the top of her lungs when she saw a super large serving size of ramen placed in front of her. It was packed full of meats, veggies, and everything else to the point the bowl was almost overflowing. No wonder it is the Leviathan. Well, time to dig in. Damn, that looks good. Naruto muttered to himself, mouth watering. "I'll have 3 bowls of the Leviathan," Naruto claimed. Ria's jaw dropped when Naruto said he would have 3 bowls, finding that extremely hard to believe. She looked at Akeno, who was taken slightly aback by his words, but she still had a smile on her face. Naruto sat down between Rias and Seraphol. 3 bowls, isn't that a little much for a guy your size?" Seraphol asked as she broke her chopsticks apart and got prepared to dig in. Naruto showed visible anger. "Are you sure you can even finish that 1 bowl?" Naruto asked her, and Rias could see that she lost her chance to make a casual conversation. Naruto's implications did not go unnoticed by the diplomat of the Devil Kings, and she leaned forward. "More than you." Sparks flew between their eyes. "Here is your order, sir. I want 3 more bowls." Seraphol proclaimed loudly to the chef, who had money signs in his eyes the second she shouted that out. "Yes, miss. I want 3 more on top of these 3. Soon enough, Naruto and Seraphol were loaded up with ramen. The two of them placed their hands together and stared at each other. Rias saw her chance coming up. There was no way a human could beat a devil when it came to the sin of gluttony. She would comfort him when he lost. "Oh, what is going on here?" Rias turned and saw her brother walking into the ramen shop with his best friend Ajuka with him. She saw her peerage become more alert to the fact that 3 of the Devil Kings were together in a single ramen shop. Music. RWBY, capabilities unseen. Naruto and Seraphol started to eat. They cleared the first bowl within moments and started on the second bowls they were working on, which didn't take that long for them to clear as well. Naruto and Seraphol glanced at each other between slurps of their noodles. In just as much time as the first bowl was cleared, the second bowl was cleared. Big appetite. Akeno looked at her large-sized bowl of ramen. That was not the Leviathan. Rias was just shocked when she saw the stack of bowls grow by another bowl as they finished their third bowls and continued on to the fourth with demonic speed. She saw Seraphol start to slow down slightly as the two of them finished the fourth bowl in about the same time as it took them to finish the first through third bowls of ramen. Then the gap widened when she slowed down even more. On her fifth bowl, she started to go half speed while Naruto continued on. He already finished the fifth bowl by the time that she was halfway down, and by the moment she finished the fifth, he was already eating his seventh bowl of ramen. Seraphol groaned as she started her sixth bowl, and she looked over towards Naruto. She looked down at her ramen bowl and more slowly started to eat it. He was on his 8th. He was on his 10th by the time she finished. Tag out, tag out. Seraphol stood up with a bloated belly and she tagged Surziches for her when she saw him. She wobbled while Naruto kept eating as his new challenger sat down and started to scarf down the ramen. Surziches didn't even question the contest, but it seemed fun, so he started to dig in. The food was delicious, so he started with the same demonic speed that Seraphol started to eat with. He ate even faster than Seraphol when he noticed the gap had only widened and was soon on his third bowl by the time that Naruto reached his 16th bowl. He is a demon, Surziches thought as he quickly finished off his fourth bowl and started his fifth bowl. The kitchen staff were working in overdrive, their shouts and screams from the kitchen could be heard, while the main ramen chef had a sparkle in his eye. Naruto started to speed up when he actually noticed that Seraphol had switched out. When Surziches finished his fifth bowl, Naruto was on his 18th bowl. Bring out all the switch outs you want, I'm going to win. Naruto made eye contact with Surziches while Seraphol laid on her back on the floor on the restaurant. She held her belly in discomfort but she still watched the competition going on. A fire was ignited in his belly when he saw that there was another person in line after Surzich's, meaning that he had more people against him. Surzich's got to 9 bowls of ramen before he put his hands over his mouth halfway through the 10th bowl. He switched out with Ajuka, who nodded his head. No questions asked, Ajuka just accepted the fact that he was next up and finished off Surzich's unfinished ramen. He felt the heat as well, the heat of the competition when Naruto just started to eat even faster. Serafal only ate 6 bowls. Surzich's ate 9.5 bowls. Even when you combined the amount they ate together, it didn't add up to the fact he was finishing his 22nd bowl of ramen and seeing a new challenger only made him speed up. Somehow, he was eating without even spilling a single drop of broth or any of the ramen going anywhere but in his mouth. This boys is a demon, a true unrelenting force of gluttony. Ajuka thought as he finished his first bowl. Naruto finished 2 more bowls in that time. Ajuka was not a big eater, so by the time he was on his 4th bowl, he felt himself ready to burst at the belly. He didn't even finish his 4th bowl before he dipped out of the competition and he collapsed backwards onto his back. Naruto grabbed his unfinished bowl and started to finish it off himself. Insult to injury. Wow, Rias had her eyes widened when Naruto stood up. He just defeated 3 Devil Kings, 3 of the 4 Satans, in a competition of gluttony. Rias was taken even more in shock when that very thing hit her even harder when she looked at the 3 devils on the floor, moaning in pain as they held their stomachs. Naruto sat back down and he kept eating, something the ramen chef was happy with. Losers pay for winners, so put my ramen on their check. Naruto gestured to the 3 on the floor. Serafal sent a shaky thumbs up to show that she was willing to face the consequences of her loss. Even 3 Satans weren't enough to match him, his gluttony. Rias felt her face flushing as she watched a human man outdo not 1, but 3 Satans in a battle of sin. She had no words and just watched Naruto stand up and leave when he was done. Not only was he more crafty than a devil, but he was more gluttonous than multiple devils. He just tempted 3 Satans into falling into gluttony, a human just made 3 devils lose to the sin of gluttony. Akeno described the situation for what it actually was. A human getting devils to lose to their gluttony and then humiliating them further. 30 bowls and half of Ajuka's bowl. If you combined all of the Satan's meals together, it was still less than what Naruto ate. He didn't just defeat them on an individual basis, he defeated their gluttony as a group effort. At the rate he had been eating, it was possible that he could have kept eating and outdone the entire lot of the Devil Kings. The gluttonous king. Young master, thank you for visiting my shop. The ramen chef rushed out from behind the counter and bowed to Naruto. Naruto just sent him a thumbs up. You serve awesome ramen. Naruto stated with a confident air. He left, the victor of a hard-fought battle. The glutton king. It took a while, but the news of 3 of their 4 leaders being outdone by a human did eventually spread through the underworld and it became a point of order that many people visited the ramen shop in order to eat the Leviathan, which caused the ramen shop to go into overdrive in their sales. Devils and fallen angels were both gathering together for the first time in a friendly way. The devils wanted to prove a point. The fallen angels just enjoyed the humiliation that the devils had gone through, so they wanted to visit the store. Since they couldn't fight in the day, and since they weren't allowed to openly be devils or fallen angels in human territory, they were forced to get along. In a way, they were forced to be around each other if they wanted to eat good ramen. It was easy to bond over good food. With Rias smirked to herself. What was more casual than an indoor water park? Uzumaki meant whirlpool, so of course a boy with that last name would be adept at swimming. Even if it wasn't one of his hobbies, she was sure that he would show up to the water park eventually. Rias had competition in the form of human girls, and as she changed into a seductive swimsuit in the changing room, she heard rumors. Naruto had been talking to Yuuto in class about how he wanted to relax by the water. This was the only water park in town. She had Yuuto place the idea of this water park in Naruto's head, and she even made sure that Naruto got lucky and won some tickets to this very water park. Tickets that expired today, so that she was sure to be able to get him here at a time of her choosing. After that, it just became a matter of finding him and stumbling into a situation where he would see her swimsuit. She made sure that Akeno wasn't at the park so that she had no competition. She gave Akeno orders to handle her requests for her so that her queen could not mess with her plans. She would. Akeno would not be able to resist herself, which would just only make things worse. She wore a purple sling swimsuit, tight enough that if she so much as moved wrong, her would pop out and the swimsuit would fall off of her. Her body was a weapon that she could use to start a conversation with Naruto, even more so if she could manage to get next to him in the water and use his possible heroic nature to get him to find her lost swimsuit. Rias smirked. She left the changing room. She walked towards the pool and she didn't have to wait long before she saw Naruto. She could see him swimming in the Olympic pool, doing laps back and forth. She appreciated his back muscles as he swam and she could see his arm muscles flexing as he swam. She could make her plan work for sure and she saw quite a few people from her class were watching as well. The fact was that it wasn't just her classmates. Naruto was swimming at an Olympic level, so he was attracting the attention of all of those around him who could appreciate a physical display. Uzumaki-kun. When you finish doing laps, do you want to come to the snack? Rias gave a small glare towards the woman, but she stopped glaring when she saw the girl was frozen in place. She wasn't the only one, her classmates were all frozen, having seen something that seemed to have shocked them. Lust. Their faces showed lust slowly growing in them, similar to the faces of the men who laid eyes on her. Rias traced where they were looking and saw Naruto getting out of the pool at the mention of his name. Did something say my name? Naruto asked as his wet hair slightly covered his eyes and water dripped off of his body. Ria's jaw dropped when she saw blue peeking out from under a curtain of gold and he had his ever-present smile. Yet, that same smile seemed much more seductive and serene as he started to close his eyes. She saw he had nice eyelashes. Rias felt her heart throbbing harder when he ran a hand through his hair and blushes appeared on the faces of everyone else watching. Rias could see people getting charmed, she could see that people had their eyes glued to Naruto. Even she herself had trouble taking her eyes off of him as he shook his hair and water droplets went flying, framing his head with a veil of sparkles for brief moments. Yuuu. Rias heard her knight behind her. Nobody was even looking at Yudo in his speedo though, they just kept their eyes on Naruto. Even the men that would normally stare at her were staring at Naruto, though their lust was not sexual, it was in jealousy. Rias could see the envy, jealousy, in their very souls as Naruto just moved out of the pool. Then he finished them off by allowing his now less wet hair to try and stick up. His every motion, his very body language, was filled with a sort of innocent confidence. Naruto passed right by her, and though he looked up and down her body, she was too focused on his chest to pay attention. Sup? Rias stared his well-defined chest and shoulder muscles, her favorite parts of a male body. Hey. Rias dumbly waved back. Later, Rias screamed into her pillow as she kicked her legs around her bed. She had failed to pull off her plan again. Like the time when she ripped her pants in the garden shop or when her advertising the Leviathan worked against her, she had nobody to blame but herself for this failure. She didn't expect him to be so hot when he was almost naked. He was always kind of goofy, so she underestimated the level of lust he could inspire in others when he was nearly nude. She had overestimated her own ability to withstand him, and it was horrible because she had not expected that level of male beauty. His body had been molded into perfect athleticism, and with his natural attractive features on display, his kind and goofy personality only made him seem so much more attractive. He seduced her. He seduced every person who so much as looked at him at the wrong time, and while she did better than the girls who actually had to cool their heads, she was still horrified. She had underestimated his body and overestimated her resistance, which only led to her pathetically being unable to make a move. If anything, in her mind her plans changed from getting herself naked around him to getting him even more naked around her. With her mind in that state of turmoil, she pulled herself out of the plan completely. He's a demon, Rias whispered to herself. He perfectly exemplified so many of the traits that her society valued, and she had gotten a first-hand example of it. He was more gluttonous than devil kings, and he was more cunning than experienced devils. Now, she could add the fact that he could inspire lust and envy in others just by existing, and he could do it without even trying. He had an innate quality about him that was just so devilish that it made her jealous. He's a human. Akeno sat down and passed her a cup of tea. Thanks, you knew. Rias glared at Akeno. Your parents wanted me to help you convince him to join your family. Akeno stated as she took her own cup and blew on it. What? Rias had not been told of any plans. All she wanted to do was to get to know Naruto better and possibly ask him on a date. She wanted to become close to the guy who indirectly freed her from her nightmare. Ria's smile started to widen when she started to imagine what her parents wanted. She wanted it too now that she thought about it. If anything, it would be disrespectful to Naruto to allow him to remain human. With the way he was too fit to be a demon. But Naruto, I missed out on swimming with a hot tie. Naruto blinked as he looked at himself in the mirror. Rias was a devil, clearly, but the fact was that he could have had fun hanging out with her at the pool. Yet all he did was pass by her, greet her, and then go about his day at the pool, as if he didn't just pass by the hottest piece of ass in that place. Naruto shrugged his shoulders, because Rias seemed like she had a lot on her mind anyway. He bet she went to the pool to relax, not to hang out with him. Akeno was enjoying herself. Morning, Akeno. Good morning, Naruto. Akeno casually greeted Naruto as she passed by him in the hallways of the school. She was in the year above him, so she had no classes, but considering that she had approached him several times before just to ask him questions about his hobbies, they were well enough off that he knew her name. Have you heard the news? Akeno asked him while he was still walking away. She had his interest. It was very easy to get interested in stuff, all you had to do was ask him something, and he would be happy to listen to the answer. No, but thanks for that pool info, it was fun. Naruto grinned as he turned around and started to walk next to Akeno, with Akeno covering her mouth with her hand. Think nothing of it. A game arcade is having an event and I was just letting you know about it. Akeno just slipped the idea into his head. She had talked to him a few times more than Rias, enough to know that he was very easy to talk to. If you told him something fun, then he was going to go check it out the first chance he got. In a way, all of Ria's plans had failed purely because of her own nervousness or because she planned too well. Every time, she managed to lure Naruto where she wanted him and then failed to do the rest. Event what kind? Naruto raised an eyebrow. There will be a tournament on the dance machines and the highest scores in end will win a prize. Akeno could see his eyes. He didn't need to know what the prize was to want it. He just was the type who liked to hear about competitions and would enter them to win the prize, even if it was a prize he didn't really care too much about. Even right now, he was grinning and thinking about what the prize might be. Sounds fun. The catch is you need to have a partner and your hand will be tied to your partner's hand the entire competition. Akeno let slip the little extra bit of information. The part that would be important to Ria's plan. She waited until after she got him interested to tell him that bit of information. Naruto nodded. Sounds fun, I guess I better look for a partner. Actually, and I hate to impose, but can you be my partner's new partner? You see, I have something important to do and I don't want my partner to suffer not being able to compete. Akeno faked some minor sadness that is. She saw Naruto raise an eyebrow at her and she knew that he saw through her sadness. He was surprisingly adept at telling when people were faking, but even if he could tell that she was faking something, he was not a mind reader. Sure. Day of the competition. Sup. Rias nodded and waved to Naruto as her words got stuck in her throat and butterflies flew around in her belly. She wore her most revealing clothes that were arcade decent, clothes that would not get her in trouble. She wanted the dancing to make her bounce as much as possible, so she even decided against wearing a bra. She saw Naruto very casually walk up to her. Guess we're partners then, so the point of this game is just to step on the arrows to the screen. Naruto walked. Some of the competition was already taking their turn. They just followed the instructions on the machine and pressed arrows. It seemed extremely easy to him and he looked at Rias and grinned. Well then partner, let's kick some ass. Naruto extended his hand. She nodded her head and shook his hand, but he looked at her weird when she realized that he was trying to bump fists with her. She had taken a fist bump and shaken his balled up fist like it was an open palm. Naruto looked down at his hand and then back at her with his confusion growing. Rias cleared her throat. Yes, let's. Rias managed to get that much out. Eventually it was their turn and they stepped up to the machines and had their right and left hands tied together. Naruto's right hand and Ria's left one were both tied up with rope, forcing them to hold hands. She took a deep breath and looked at Naruto to see what his reaction to holding her hand was. We got this, we're going to win, that prize is mine. He was focused and not distracted by the fact he was holding her hand at least. He saw a goal and targeted it with single-minded focus. A decent trait to say the least, and it made her feel better since she knew what the prize was. Needless to say, they won. They had the hardest, longest song, picked for them by Rias, who had paid the judge to pick the song that would allow her to move and shake her body the most. She made sure to shake her as much as physically possible, and she made sure even more that her skirt would flip and give him as many peeks at her panties as he would want to see. Of course, the audience watching them was given just as many peeks at her panties, and several people had to leave to go take care of their arousal. She didn't care how many people who she had to get excited, as long as one of those people were Naruto. We did it, yes. Naruto shouted as he raised his and Ria's hands in the air. They won. Yes, you did, and now as the victory pair, please come forward and have your picture taken for the wall of victory. That is all the prize is getting on some wall. Naruto asked with disappointment on his face. He and Rias had the rope around their hands taken off as they were pulled together towards the place where they would get their photo taken. He looked at Rias for a moment before he glanced down at her chest. She had been sweating a bit and he could see hints of pink through her clothes. She's not wearing a bra. Naruto noticed as his cheeks flushed very slightly. Rias smiled at him. He just glanced at her. See, it isn't so bad this way. We have proof that. Rias stepped backwards and there was a can of soda underneath her foot. She slipped backwards and fell onto her back with both of her legs in the air. She gave a small cry of surprise at tripping, but she made sure to fall in such a way that she could use her accident. She would give Naruto a flash of her panties. At the exact same time, the photographer snapped the picture of her and Naruto next to each other. She saw the flash and she looked towards Naruto with a forced shy smile on her face and slowly covered her panties. At least she didn't forget to wear her panties, but those panties are way too sexy for a trip to the arcade. Naruto scratched his cheek and helped Rias back to her feet. Much later. So, your plan worked and you were able to talk to him. Ah, I forgot. Rias realized that she had barely actually said anything to Naruto at all. Her plan had worked so completely, but she never used her success to accomplish anything at all. She was able to become partners with him for a competition that she paid the arcade to hold for her. She was able to give Naruto a panty shot and a free look at her braless and a slightly sweaty shirt to give him that free show. She never abused it. She forgot to tease him about seeing her in panties and she never actually talked about anything to him. She had been so happy that her plan was succeeding that she forgot the entire plan was just for them to have a chance to grow closer together. You were so happy to be succeeding that you wasted this chance. Fine here. Akeno grabbed a piece of paper and started to write down something for Rias. It was a phone number. Is this for my next scheme, somebody to help? It's Naruto's cell number. Akeno stated with a smile. When did you get this? Rias exclaimed, a feeling of betrayal in her voice as she grabbed the paper and looked at it more closely. She already had her own phone out and she was entering it into her phone. I asked for it like 3 weeks ago, sometimes I text him and send him pictures of breakfast. Akeno cooks for herself and for Rias sometimes and she would take pictures of their breakfast and send them to Naruto for his opinion on how it looked. This had been going on for 3 weeks now, while Rias had been plotting and scheming to get close to him. Akeno smiled. Well, she also did send him another picture. Akeno pressed send on her phone. With Naruto, it's Akeno. Hey Rias, should I go natural or shave? Oh, she meant to send this to Rias and what Naruto's cheeks started to go red and his nose went pink when he saw the picture that Akeno had tried to send to Rias. It was a picture of Akeno, butt naked, with her free arm going over her chest, but that was the least of his concerns when it came to this picture. She had sent him a nude. Wrong person, I'll delete this picture from my phone. Oh, sorry, but since you saw the picture, it's a little too late. So I might as well ask you, so do you think I should shave or go natural? With Akeno, seems letting it grow out was a good choice. Akeno whispered under her breath when she saw Naruto was typing, but it was taking him a long time to respond to her question. Rias was putting way too much effort into her plans when it was so much easier than she thought. Like sending a nude to Naruto under the false pretense that she was sending it to him by complete mistake. She had her fill of teasing for the moment and she could use this little mistake to her benefit in the future. She could also claim it was a genuine mistake and it would not make her seem like she was super weird. She would seem like the type who was willing to go with the flow when she made a normal mistake. Rias was too smart for her own good. What should I text him? Rias asked. Oh, tell him you got his number from me and thank him for helping you win the competition. Of course, you could always just send him a nude and pretend you meant to send it to me. That way you can give him a guilt-free show. Akeno mocked Rias while giving her advice. Akeno was mocking Rias by telling her exactly what she had done in a way that she just seemed to be giving good advice. Akeno was having the time of her life teasing Rias and Naruto. She actually hoped that they grew closer so that she could have more of her personal fun with them. She had so many things she could do to amuse herself with them, but that was all the more reason for her to do her absolute best to make sure that Rias succeeded. Rias' success was her success too. It was a terrifying thought. As the students learned more and more about Senjutsu, they could sense and read others better, and because they were learning the art so slow but well, they truly had a sense of Hashirama, the god of Senjutsu. Hashirama had earned the title of god of Senjutsu in his youth, for he had been the human who had mastered Senjutsu to a level that not even those who ascended to a Buddha state had reached. For the humans who could use Senjutsu but not read him, he just seemed like a kind old man. For those who could read him, his title was truly well earned. To get to Adventist classes early, Hashirama gave them a simple test. Stand up. I can't stand up, Kaneko thought as she was on her belly, trying her best to push herself up to her feet. She used her own Senjutsu, but she wasn't strong enough. Hashirama was lifting his finger. With just his finger, he was causing a massive gravity-like pressure to overcome them. Cracks were appearing on the ground around them, and it was shaking under the sheer weight and density of his power. There was an aura around his body that only those in tune with nature would be able to see with their eyes. Come on Kaneko, this is your 6th time trying to take this test, there is no rush. You can go to the advanced classes when you graduate high school. Hashirama was kind with his voice, but the pressure he was exerting never seemed to stop. He saw her gripping the grass harder as she tried with all of the strength of her muscle and power she could muster. She managed to push herself off the ground as her sweat dripped off of her body, but even doing that made her seem like she was going to throw up. No, Kaneko thought as she puked on the ground, but still struggled further to get up. She took a doggy-style position, and her legs struggled as she tried her best to get up on them. The other students in her class had long since passed out and were no longer under the influence of Hashirama's aura. He did it, Kaneko stated. Naruto did it. He did it when he was 12, he managed to pass this test when he was 12 years old and got into the advanced Senjutsu class. She had been trying every single chance she got, but each time she tried to fight Hashirama's power with her own, she couldn't do it. He's the only person who ever passed, though nobody before him has ever managed to do it. Hashirama wanted her to know there was no shame in Kaneko failing again. She had tried so many times, and like every student who ever wanted to go to the advanced classes early, she failed them. He looked at her face and smiled. "Come on Gramps, is that all you got?" Hashirama looked at Naruto with a slight surprise to his eyes when he saw Naruto cloaked in his own power, Naruto having a golden, smooth-flowing aura coming out of his body as he wore it like it was a cloak. Naruto was standing proud, his hand gripping his forearm as he stared him down with a look of confidence and defiance. Senjutsu was the ability to become part of nature. The advanced form was the ability to become part of space and time and control it. That meant surpassing nature, meaning the energy you had needed to be stronger than the power that nature already possessed. You needed a fundamental understanding of all things, the ability to surpass yourself. Of course not. I think that is all you got, because I can't feel it. Hashirama pumped on the gas and tested to see if Naruto truly understood what he needed to do, but even when he pushed it, he could no longer make Naruto take a knee. Naruto stood standing, completely unaffected by his aura. He matched him. Naruto learned to take his own energy and, like a puzzle, match his own energy to the type that Hashirama was putting out. If Hashirama had an energy that was Abbott, then Naruto had a power that was Bob, so their energies could never match each other and would always fight. That meant that Naruto had learned to transform his energy from his natural Bob and turn it into a Abbott type of energy, while still managing to keep it as a Bob type on the inside. Naruto was unaffected by his aura because Naruto was putting out the exact same type of aura, which negated the effects of his aura. Hashirama smirked. He changed the nature of his power, changing it from what could be called Abbott into ABBB, and he watched Naruto smile wider, but he still remained unaffected. Naruto transformed his energy into the same type just as soon as Hashirama did. Naruto was able to sense the changes as they were happening and change his own energy in order to remain unaffected. He learned the trick to mastering Senjutsu at the higher levels. Hashirama kept smiling as Kaneko tried to brute force her way into passing, but her eyes rolled into the back of her head and she rolled over onto her side moments later. The trick was not to fight. The trick was to accept the power and change your own power to be able to not fight the opposing force. To change yourself and become flexible enough to allow your life force to change to fit any situation. Hashirama changed his own power to match Kaneko's power and he allowed his energy to fill her and bring her back to health. Her eyes rolled back and she inhaled, no longer sensing the overwhelming sense of pressure over her shoulders. With Naruto, Senjutsu was not exactly the same. The core requirements were the same, and there were similar uses for it like enhancing your body, increasing healing ability and endurance, and making techniques more powerful by using it. It allowed you to become one with nature and read your surroundings. This world's Senjutsu was easier. That was because the way this world used their energy was easier to understand and easier to manipulate. It was based on raw power and your ability to control and imagine your power. For a guy like him, that was a gift. It was far easier to make use of the power he was born with in this world than it was to use chakra. Not only did he had less to control, even though it was still massive, but the power itself was easier to manage. Not that he could risk going over his limit when he trained or else provoke whatever power was sleeping inside of him into growing. So, it was time to see if he could recreate it. Fire. Naruto summoned an orb of fire in front of him, transforming his Senjutsu enhanced power into fire and controlling it into the shape of a ball. They had a fierce spiral inside of it, the power raging inside of a small sphere. Water. He created a whirlpool in the form of a tiny orb, with the currents fierce enough that mist would try to escape out of the ball, only to be pulled back into the water by the very raging torrents it was trying to escape. Earth. Mud and stone took shape in front of him, and he forced it to become condensed into a spiked mud ball that rotated in place. It was the harder element for him to control, since it was the hardest element to create from nothing. Lightning. He felt a jolt as he watched a ball of lightning spark around, with small bolts flashing off of it and curving, before they would collect back into the ball. He felt a pain in his chest when he summoned such a familiar-looking technique right in front of him, and having it enhanced by Senjutsu only made the jolt he felt stronger. He felt a small phantom pain in the right side of his chest, but he pushed the feelings to the side. Wind. The easiest, by far the easiest, for him to imagine as sharpened winds gathered and formed a sphere of gusting and spinning winds that just filled him with a sense of relief. Even in this body, he had such a strong connection to this element. In nothingness form. The concept of nothingness, the infinite expanse that was the yin release. To grasp the infinite expanse of dreams and to give them form. It was a difficult concept to grasp, but he had experience mentally grasping it. When he attained the six-path sage mode in his otherworld life, he had been given the ability to understand all things in the universe at an innate level. To truly grasp that which humans could not grasp. He gave form to that in the shape of a black ball of energy that both existed and did not exist at the same time. Yang vitality physical energy life, the concept of birthing life from the nothingness to give dreams reality. life in its utmost pure and unfiltered form, the energy able to truly physically alter all things and give life new form and control the new form that life takes. The innate ability to grant life to things that have none, and to fit it, he created a white ball of pure life. Senjutsu. Naruto extended his hands and took his own senjutsu power and held it out in a ball. Unlike the other techniques that had senjutsu infused into them, he used pure senjutsu to form the ball in front of him. He felt it out in the middle of the balls that he created and he stared at all of them. They moved together. Fire, water, earth, lightning, wind, yin, and yang started to get pulled towards the senjutsu ball in the center. The senjutsu in each of the elements being drawn towards the pure senjutsu that he was holding. The elements started to fuse together and lose their shape and gain shape as they became nothingness. They were as everything. All of the elements, including the very concepts of yin and yang, fused together and created a ball of nothingness. To call it a black ball would be an insult because it was blacker than black. It was a ball that looked like light could never touch it. It floated in the air, but it floated in a way that was unnatural. It looked like it didn't belong where it was. It was terrifying to behold by its very nature. Naruto grabbed it and watched as it did nothing to him. He gripped it and he manipulated the yin in it and the yang in it and the form of the ball changed so that it was a bow staff. He gripped the staff and he looked at a boulder in front of him. Okay, time to test if it worked. Naruto slowly moved the staff at the boulder. It passed through. Everything the black of the staff touched, it was just gone and he could see exactly what he erased as he moved the staff. The parts of the boulder that touched the staff were just gone, as if they had never existed in the first place. They weren't destroyed or teleported to another dimension or broken or even turned to dust. The smoothness of the damage to the boulder was just unnatural as well. Erased gone. Naruto looked at a bird. He hated himself, but he needed to know if the technique was truly on par with what he had acquired in his other life. He turned the staff back into a floating ball and in the blink of an eye the ball flew at the bird. The bird didn't see it coming and didn't touch. It didn't cry out in pain when it was hit, but Naruto was using senjutsu. He could sense exactly what happened to the bird as it was happening. Gone. Its body was gone and its soul was erased with it. Naruto had seen the effects of this technique on souls in the other world. He had seen what had happened to his own father's soul after he had been hit by this technique. The birth no longer existed, body and soul were both gone, completely and utterly just gone. Not destroyed. Gone. It was as if it had never existed and not a trace of it remained. I shouldn't have tried this. Naruto spoke to himself as he willed the orb away. He had been obsessed with the new technique memories he was getting as he got older, but he had forgotten to think on if he should be recreating such things. Now he had his hands on something that was terrifying and a very tempting power that by all means should have never existed and should never exist. To kill your enemies was one thing he could slightly agree sometimes needed to happen. To erase them body and soul from existence was a punishment that he didn't believe anyone had to authority to deal out, including himself. I fucked up. Naruto laughed at his own mistake. He should have known better than to create techniques from the memories he was getting because he lacked the same experience that the other version of him had, the discipline, when he gained the techniques. He loved the peace of this world and he was ruining it by creating techniques that could only ever be used to do evils that he had never wished on even his greatest of enemies. Next time he had the idea to recreate something from his memories, he would ask himself a simple question. Should he do it? He's taking time off school. Yeah, apparently somebody saw him getting on a plane leaving Japan. Rias listened to the school rumors with an eyebrow raising up since apparently she was going to have some time to decide what she was going to do about getting Naruto's attention. It seemed her failures were really giving Akeno some good ways to tease her and she wanted more planning time to get a success under her belt. She wondered what business Naruto had leaving Japan though. With Naruto took his hand off of a man's head. I hate learning languages this way. Naruto groaned as he rubbed the bridge of his nose, having practically absorbed the information from the man. It was like instantly downloading a bugged file from a computer and it just strained his brain. It was a similar technique to the one used by devils to alter memories in humans, but he just took the memories of language, copied them, and pasted them into the language part of his brain. His grandmother taught it to him. Forced it on him. Yep, but our time is limited, so you better hurry and rescue the poor girl, since you are indirectly responsible for what happened to her. Hashirama stated as he stood next to Naruto with his facial features painted by seriousness. He was guilt-tripping Naruto, but it was the best way to get him motivated to help the girl. When things happened, more things happened in response. Hashirama was a master of senjutsu. He got visions, and he could read those visions and tell what was going to happen in the future, though that was an art he usually reserved for locating talented students for his school. This was a vision that he had gotten shortly after Naruto left for Kuo, but he decided not to interfere since it was not an issue he was allowed to get involved with. Anything that happened with the church to their people was none of their business since they involved themselves more with yokai than any other species. So where is she going to kill herself? Read the flow of her destiny, find the taste of death and follow it. When a person intends to die, they give off the feel of death, the desire for their own death. If you can locate that, hound her. Ashirama watched as Naruto closed his eyes for half a second before he started to run off without him. The elderly man could only look surprised, since he had expected it to take much longer for Naruto to properly learn to read and distinguish between negative emotions. It was a skill even he had trouble with, and only his wife Mito had ever truly mastered the ability to sense all negative emotions across a city and tell them apart with ease. Somewhere else, Asia Argento, a young 16-year-old woman, stared at the ground below her as she stood at the edge of a tall building. Her eyes red and puffy, only wearing a dirty and torn dress, with patches of cloth torn from it. Her clothes were similar to a nun's clothing, and there was a red line around her neck where a necklace had been ripped off of her. She had been kicked out of the church. She had nothing. She had been branded a witch, and she couldn't help herself but agree. She almost gave birth to a devil's child, against her will, but the fact remained that she still ended up being impregnated by a demon and nearly giving birth to its child. She had not had sex of her own free will, and she had not known a devil had been the one to rape her when it happened. All she remembered was a desperate man running towards her. The man had been a teenager around her age with evil, vile eyes. She panicked. When she had been told she was pregnant, she had been horrified, but she had accepted it and promised herself to raise the child. Then several months later, it was discovered that the child was not fully human. While it was still in her womb, it was purified and murdered before it could ever be born. She had panicked and rushed into it, and even though the baby was not human and that it had belonged to the man who raped her, the sadness she felt had been immense. "I'm sorry, but I'll join you, I'll go to hell with you." Asia tried her best to steel her nerves. She would take her own life and go to hell, where she could apologize to her unborn. "If you're going to jump, you should do it head first." "Okay," Asia stated to the boy who showed up out of nowhere. She would take his advice, and she looked back at him and saw that he was sweating a little. He must have run up the stairs as fast as he could in order to give her advice on the most painless way for her to end it. She didn't have the energy to argue with him. "Thank you." She did have the energy to thank him though. "Yep, so what are you waiting for? Jump so I can save your life." "What?" Asia asked as she looked at the man with her dead eyes. "You're not dying today, but jump so you can see how scary it is. If you still want to die after I save you, then I'll push you off the edge myself," Naruto promised her. Asia stepped closer to the edge in response to his words, and she looked over at the bottom again. "What? Try and kill yourself, go ahead, but I'm not going to let you do it though," Naruto told her as he gestured for her to jump. "If even for a second I think you want to live, I'm going to save you," Naruto promised her, changing the way he worded it. "Why save me? I took a life." "Yep, you murdered your own child. There are no ways to argue it. If you want to kill yourself, then you have the right to do that. I heard the story on the way here. What you did was evil and an accident." "It wasn't an accident. With my own hands I performed the blessing." That Asia covered her mouth when the urge to vomit became so powerful that she was almost unable to stop it. She stepped back and felt her breath halt in her throat as she remembered and admitted to her own actions out loud. Naruto grabbed her and pushed her towards the edge. "Yeah, so if you really think that you don't ever deserve the chance to make things right, then you can jump off the edge." Naruto pushed her more so that her toes were hanging over the edge. Fear. Asia tried her hardest to back up the second that Naruto was the one that started to try and force her over the edge. She tried to escape his hands, and life started to return to her eyes as she was put closer to the edge than she had been before. Stop. Apparently, the guy who raped you is set to be executed the second they manage to catch him. He has a history of raping holy women, and once his sins were discovered, he got desperate, and in his desperation, he rushed here to get one final laugh. Hey, you got your revenge though, you killed his child, did it feel good? Of course not, it was horrible. I felt horrible when I did it. I panicked, I did it in the spur of the moment. It wasn't an accident, I didn't think it through. Asia was crying as she spoke. She stopped struggling, and she looked back over the edge. "Why are you doing this? Why are you hurting me like this?" Asia asked. Why was this random guy doing this to her? "I want you to seriously think about if you want to die or not. I'm not going to sugarcoat it because as long as people live, they need a reason to live. You lost your religion, you have no family, no friends, no money, you're homeless, nobody would even care if you died. If you jumped, the world would be a worse place," Naruto told her. His words confused her. "If nobody would miss me, why would the world be a worse place?" "Because, you have the power to save lives. All the people who need you, all of those people you could have helped, will be hurting. You've got a good heart, and despite your mistake, you're a good person. Everyone makes mistakes. I sold myself." Asia had tears in her eyes as she spoke. "You were desperate. I had sex with people I didn't know." After she got kicked from the church, she had nothing. She had no home and no money, so she had been forced to make money for herself. Nobody offered her a place to stay for free, and she had been forced to do things to make enough money to eat and sleep with people so that she could have a place to sleep. You did what you needed to do to survive because deep down, you know you don't want to die. Still, you were struggling. I don't want you to become a murderer for my sake. If anyone should kill me, it should be B. Don't dirty your hands over me. Asia struggled and got out of his grasp. She backed away from him and couldn't look him in the face. Naruto looked at her. He offered a hand to her. Instead of killing yourself, come with me and save lives. I don't deserve that. You deserve the chance to earn a second chance. If you kill one person, then save the lives of 100 people. It was more than just murder. I sold my body. My virginity was stolen, but even after that, I still had sex with people I didn't love. Then tell your story. If you made a mistake, then stop other people from making your mistake. Use your pain and let it become what motivates you to make sure as many people as possible never had to experience what you did. Still, Naruto rushed towards Asia and kicked her in the hip, knocking her clear off the side of the building. Her arms and legs flailed around as she went flying off the building, and her eyes widened when she was able to see the ground starting to get a lot closer. She screamed. She only fell 4 feet before she stopped falling, and she felt the man grab her by the wrist and catch her before she could fall any further. All of the life and desire to die had returned to her eyes, and Naruto pulled her up to the roof. I'm alive. If you die, then you aren't helping anyone but yourself. If you live, then you can use your life to help others so they don't have to experience your pain. Naruto pulled Asia away from the edge, and she collapsed onto her butt, her heart racing even faster than ever before in her life. She looked at his face. Naruto was giving her a smile. Who could I possibly save? Asia resisted. Blood splashed across her face. You can save my life for starters. Naruto told Asia as he gestured to the stump where his arm ended. Asia's eyes widened in horror. Naruto cut his arm off at his bicep and then he threw his severed arm off of the side of the building. He did it with no hesitation, even as blood poured out of his wound and onto the roof below them. Asia screamed in shock as she rushed towards him. Why did you do this for me? Asia rushed to his side and started to heal his arm, stop the bleeding and close his wound. You made a mistake and took a life, and now you've saved a life as well. Since you're still alive, that is the reason why I'm still alive. I'm alive because you're alive. Naruto had not hesitated to cut his arm off if it meant that he could save her life. He was indirectly responsible for what happened to her. Guess I'm left-handed now. Naruto joked about his arm as he looked at the one arm he had. Asia started to cry. She bawled her eyes out as relief overcame her, and she collapsed to her knees the second his arm stopped bleeding. But Hashirama 2 hours later. Mito is going to kill me. Hashirama was freaked out when he saw his child missing an arm, and the first thing that came to his mind being what his wife would do when she found out. He could tell that it was his fault that this happened, something he said would for sure be at fault. I don't see why, I still have 2 arms. My left hand. Naruto raised his left hand. Hashirama looked at the sad Asia as she looked at the stump where his right arm used to be, but Naruto remained grinning. And me. Asia had a trace of a smile when she whispered that. Sorry, but I don't think her life is worth your arm. Hashirama hated to say that, but Naruto took a hit to his combat strength by losing part of his body. He also would face many challenges with the loss of his dominant hand. Do you think she will be accepted at the academy? If it gets out you lost your arm to save her, then she'll be killed. So she will stay with me, then problem solved. Anyway, she is my age, so she would have been sent to a high school anyway. There is no high school division at your school. Guess I have somebody to help me out. Naruto laughed. Hashirama paused before laughing. My wife is going to murder me. Oh well, guess there is no helping it, as long as you're alright. I'm more left now. Hashirama knew it was no laughing matter, but he couldn't help himself. He started to laugh when the boy Hiras joked about his own missing arm. It was official. Mito was going to kill him for this. Building Asia was the right choice. Also, it allowed him to keep her near him so that he could protect her. The man who ruined her life still existed in the world, alive and well, and it would only be a matter of time before he approached her again. The man who apparently made it a habit of ruining the lives of so many people that he came into contact with. He would go after Asia again. Fucked up people like that enjoyed tormenting their targets, and Asia was his target. He would say that within 2 weeks, the man would approach Asia again. He would follow her to Kuo so that he could rape her, kidnap her, and force her to birth his child. Sick and twisted people like him were the easiest to predict. He would never attack Asia if she had a strong-looking bodyguard. So he would take advantage of Asia's kindness by making himself seem weaker, and he would look less like her bodyguard and more like her patient. She was a medic at heart, and that meant that she would 100% care for him if he was injured. Yet with her powers, not injury that he could do to himself would fit the bill of making him look weaker without doing something that would leave behind a scar. Of course, the man had already entered Kuo and had been observing Asia for 3 days. Sick bastard, some people have no hearts after all. Naruto grumbled as he suppressed his power and cracked his neck with his remaining hand. He looked at Asia as she slept. It was the middle of the night after all, and she was suffering from a severe case of jet lag. Naruto hopped to his feet with a grin on his face. Time to do some hunting. But the bastard, I'll kill her little weakling right in front of her, he's making her want to be happy it seems. I know, I'll torture him in front of her. He was delighted. Well, he wished Asia had killed herself and went to hell. He couldn't help himself but be overjoyed at the fact he had the chance to break her even further. A man saved her life and gave her hope for a better future, and there was no better chance to break a person than when they were just given hope. He knew that if he just wanted around long enough, he would be able to enjoy tormenting Asia even further. I'll kidnap her and use her to make my own army. It might take her entire life, but I'll get my revenge. I'll break her and breed her, but first I should kill her savior to start it all off. Diodora spoke to his one remaining peerage member who stayed with him. He was not as alone as people thought he was. His peerage were deathly loyal to him because he had mentally broken all of them. Even more than that, his queen had remained unconfined in prison so that she could testify against him. Yes, sir. I should do it myself. I'll kill the cripple right in front of her. What next? Rape him and then rape Asia again while fresh off my kill. It will destroy her to have her savior's blood be used as lube. Wow, that is messed up. Diodora stopped when he realized he was speaking casually with somebody that was not supposed to be there. He looked at the queen on his peerage and noticed that she was knocked out on the ground. Sitting on her back was the cripple that he had been talking about, and his eyes widened in shock. He was knocked out before he could do anything. Back at the apartment, Diodora was tied up when he woke up. He was also laying inside of a bathtub and his magic was sealed off. He looked up and saw Naruto staring down at him, and his eyes widened when he got a good look at his kidnapper. He saw with rage in his soul the man whose actions were the reason why he was hated by his people. Naruto, I'm not going to untie you or ungag you, but glare all you want. You took my bait pretty easy, then again you are a coward. Naruto stated as he grabbed a rubber glove and slipped it over his left hand with some difficulty. It was hard to work with one hand after all, but it was well worth it. Diodora struggled to try and say something when he was called a coward. You are a coward. The man took the bait so easily that he could be nothing but a coward. He came after Asia because she didn't kill herself, and he only tried to attack because he thought he would win for sure. He saw his opponent was crippled by a missing arm and knew that he would have a better chance of winning. What are you going to do, kill me? Diodora thought with a death glare. Naruto didn't need to be a mind reader. I'm not going to kill you. I already broke your spell on Asia. Your brainwashing won't hurt her anymore. Naruto had already looked over Asia and used his senjutsu to destroy the magic in her head that had been tempting her. He did it during the plane ride back to Japan. When she fell asleep on the plane, he looked her over. He found magic that was slowly brainwashing her to commit sin, and he would tell her about it once she had recovered. As it stood, Asia was in no condition to believe that some of her actions were influenced by magic. She would just accept that it was her fault. Torture. I'm not a fan of torture, but I'm very creative. You could say imagination is something I have in spades. Now let's see what punishment fits the crime. Naruto mumbled loud enough for Diodora to hear him. I will be your judge and jury for this trial. Diodora struggled even more. 14 women broken, 1 man broken, and you attempted to break Asia. You raped all of them, gave most of them hope and tore it away, abused them all for your own amusement, and brainwashed them. Your magic seduced Asia into becoming a prostitute, but part of the blame is on her for that one. Naruto knew the magic didn't force Asia to do it, but it did tempt her to do actions she normally would not be likely to do. In her desperation, the little voice in her head that was Diodora's magic convinced her to do what she did. Naruto took a scalpel. Diodora screamed into his gag. Then there is my arm. Do you know how much it sucks to cut your arm off? I needed to make sure Asia would stay by my side, and I needed to make myself weaker so a coward like you would feel comfortable enough coming after her. Naruto lamented his missing arm. Still, he had no real choice but to go to extremes in order to make sure Asia would not ever be tormented by Diodora again. The scalpel started to glow. He made a small cut on Diodora's arm. No pain. Don't worry, you won't feel a thing yet, and look, no blood, just stone. Naruto showed the part that he had cut started to turn to stone. Diodora looked at 3 inches of his skin and the muscle beneath started to turn to stone. Yep, you're not ever going to die. I'm going to turn you to stone and shatter you, then for all of eternity you can spend all of your time thinking about what you did. Diodora screamed into his gag as loud as he possibly could. Yep, no death, no sleep, no pain, no pleasure. I'm sentencing you to hell, a real hell where you can never do anything, you have no purpose, and you're all alone. I'm cutting you off from everything you enjoy. Naruto started to make more cuts on Diodora, and the stone spread with each cut that he made. Diodora could only watch with tears in his eyes as more and more of his body was turned to stone. Instead of shattering you, I might strip you naked and send you back to the underworld. That way you will be a lesson to people like you. Naruto humiliated Diodora further. Pain was the torture of losers. Naruto knew that to inflict true torture on a person, you needed to attack their mind. He learned that when he was a child, his entire life in the other world had taught him that the greatest of pains did not need to be physical. I think losing an arm is a fine price to pay to send a message to devils like you. Show them that there are punishments worse than death. Naruto had finished turning over half of Diodora's body to stone. To think this could have been avoided. Diodora was too busy screaming. If you had just crawled into a little hole and kept to yourself, it would have been fine. No, you decided that you wanted to hurt Asia even more. You wanted to hurt her in every way possible, to break her. You saw me helping her and saw a chance to give her hope and crush her hope. You wanted to take her hope away as quickly as possible. Naruto explained where he failed to Diodora. Because you're a sick bastard. You wanted to hurt her as soon as possible, so you couldn't wait, and because of that, you were so easy to manipulate. All I had to do was cut my arm off and let her stay with me. Naruto whispered into Diodora's ear with anger underlining his voice. Diodora was crying. Only his head remained. I'm going to make her happy. Diodora froze when he heard that. He looked at Naruto. I'm going to make Asia happy. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make her happy. You raped her and manipulated her to make her sell her body. I'm going to make her love sex. I'm going to make sure that she remembers you as the worst partner she has ever had. Naruto was attacking Diodora where it hurt most. No physical pain needed. Diodora was screaming wordlessly at Naruto with all of his hatred in his eyes just telling exactly what he wanted to say. So Naruto continued. Your magic made her panic and kill her baby. I'm going to make sure she has a massive family. She's going to have a big family, a loving family. She will remember you. She will be thankful to you. You will be part of the reason why she has her happy, loving family. She's going to name one of her children after you, a daughter. Naruto whispered the most thankful and supportive things to Diodora. The devil was picturing it. He hated it. She will hate me. She will remember me as the best fuck she has ever had. She will hate me because she will never have a happy family. She will always remember that she is a whore and hate herself. Diodora's eyes screamed at Naruto. Naruto grinned. So easy. If Asia thinks of herself as a whore, I will make sure she is happy and proud to be one. You will be remembered as her worst lover and she will be thankful to you. I will take care of her and make her happy. Her first daughter will be named after you, her daughter. Naruto repeated his threat to Diodora. It was a terrifying thought. Naruto had more. I won't just stop there. I will save your entire peerage. I'll fix them all and make them forget about you. I'll make them happy and make sure they all end up in loving homes. Your women will end up happy and married to good men, and your man will get himself a good wife. You won't even be a distant memory. You will only be remembered by Asia, and she will be thankful to you. She will remember you fondly. Naruto attacked Diodora as he nearly finished turning most of his body to stone. Only his head remained. Diodora was evil to his very core, so no amount of physical pain would be enough to make him meet a fitting end. Naruto would whisper things that normal good people would be happy to hear. Diodora wanted to be remembered as evil and hated, and he wanted his victims to carry trauma for their entire lives. He wanted his existence to be a wound, to destroy people down to their souls and be remembered that way. Naruto didn't need to inflict any physical pain to Diodora. You were so easy to manipulate. Are you even a devil? Naruto was done with that sentence. Diodora was turned to stone. His punishment would last an eternity. Diodora would spend a timeless eternity, punished by his words and his condition. Time would eventually fade away as Diodora had no way to tell it, and eventually his punishment would drive him to insanity. I didn't even want to enjoy that. Using my imagination for shit like this is not fun. Naruto rubbed the back of his head in annoyance. The sad part. He kind of enjoyed it. Isn't this a bit much? Nope, my granny says strong mental health begins with a healthy body. Naruto stated as he balanced her full plate on one arm. He had cooked breakfast for Asia, and since she was going to college at his family school and attending high school with him, that meant he had to get her up to snuff during her high school time. Asia looked at how he was balancing his own plate of food on his stump of an arm. Let me help. Nope, sit down and eat. Naruto tripped her when she tried to help him, and he tossed his plate on top of his head. Before she hit the ground, he grabbed her wrist and pulled her arm so that she landed back in her seat. He smoothly placed her plate on the table, and by the time she realized what happened, she was sitting at the table with her breakfast before her. She saw Naruto taking his plate off his head before he sat it down. Asia looked at him struggling as he sat down and how he seemed awkward with his chopsticks in his left hand. She started to stand up again so that she could help him, but the second she started to stand up, Naruto pulled her chair forward with his foot and forced her to sit back down. Nah, eat it all. Naruto told her with a pointed look, and he started to eat. She nodded submissively and started to eat. She noticed that she was giving a spoon and fork and not chopsticks like he was using. She started to eat, and before she was even halfway through, she felt herself getting full. She felt bad to not be able to eat the entire plate, but she started to stand up, only to be forced back into her chair. I'm minus 30 minutes later. Ooh. Asia held her stomach in mild pain. He forced her to eat her entire plate, every single scrap, and then just to be sure, she was made to lick it clean when she was done. She had never known that she could be miserable from overeating like she had. She looked and saw Naruto had finished eating his second plate before he slapped his belly a few times. Sorry, I don't have any girls' clothes, we'll go shopping later. Where are my clothes? I burned them. Naruto told her, and since she was just wearing one of his shirts, her reaction was somewhat priceless. They smelled horrible, and the stains were not going to come out. Naruto didn't even want to try and remove the stains that she had accumulated during her time without a home. Asia blushed in embarrassment at being told her clothes stunk, and she looked at the clean shirt she was wearing. Without underwear. Thankfully he was taller than her, and since she was a girl, her legs were longer than her torso in comparison to how his body was. His shirt was more than enough to hide what needed to be hid. I'm half joking, I did burn your old clothes, but I took your measurements last night when you were asleep and I sent them to my granny. Here, I'll let you borrow some of these. Naruto opened a cardboard box and Asia saw that there were clothes in it. Why do you? Asia stopped when she realized she was about to ask something rude. Naruto shrugged. These will be a little tight on you. You're taller than Kaneko, and your measurements are a little bit bigger. Naruto could compare the measurements. Asia was a good bit taller, so Kaneko's clothes would not fit perfectly. You can attend school without your uniform for 3 days. Naruto would still have her go to school. While Kaneko's clothes would be a bit tight, Asia would still be able to wear them with only slight discomfort. Why do you have girls' clothes? Whoops, it slipped out anyway. It's my hobby. Naruto laughed off her question. Don't bother with panties, they won't fit. The bras will be tight, but should fit. Naruto told her as he left the room to let her get dressed. On the way to school, Pastor, don't stop jogging the entire time. Naruto told Asia as he lightly jogged to school. He had the sleeve of his shirt flopping, and he acted as if he still had an arm there, and honestly, he still had half of his bicep on that side. Asia was in decent shape for a girl her age, but she lacked athletic ability. She was clearly not an athlete, but if she ate a bunch and did not burn it off, then she would just get fat. She needed to gain some healthy weight by putting on a small amount of both muscle and fat. That meant forcing her to eat until she was stuffed and then using the trip to school to make her burn off some of it and then use the time after school to work on getting her up to healthy physical condition. Are you sure you're okay? Asia was sweating a little. His jog seemed awkward to her. I'm fine. Are you sure? Asia yelped when Naruto slowed down enough for her to bump into his back and she was knocked off of her balance and landed on her butt. She yelped when she hit the ground and she looked up at Naruto. He glanced back at her. Naruto broke into a full sprint. At school, see, you couldn't keep up with me at all. Are you fine, Asia? Naruto asked her as he waited for her at the gate. She was panting and suffering while he was perfectly fine. Asia grabbed her knees and bent forward. She looked up towards him and she saw he wasn't even winded by the run. She lost track of him near the beginning and she just now caught up with him. She felt some humiliation. He was fine. See, I see. Asia felt shame. She had been pushing her help onto him even when he genuinely didn't need the help. You see. Naruto could see that she understood now. It never hurt to help others, but some people did not want or need the help. Offering your help to those who genuinely had no need for it could be seen as insulting. Since no matter how many times he told her he was fine, she never stopped offering her help for even the most minor of things. She wanted to help him more, but now she seemed to understand that it was not always appropriate for her to offer her help over the smallest of things. Good. Naruto stated as he offered her a water bottle. Good. Here, some water, you need it. Naruto gave her the water and she nodded. Her mouth was dry and she didn't have anything to drink. I'm fine, you, Asia started before he shoved the bottle into her mouth. She was forced to drink the water. She tried to do what he always did to her by saying he was fine, but it was clear to her that if she needed help, he would give her help regardless. See? I don't see. Asia gasped when he took the water from her and finished it off himself and she watched him. She didn't see what he was trying to tell her. No, you don't. Naruto agreed with her. Can you explain it? Just watch me and learn from me. That isn't helpful. Asia tried to use her brain to figure out why he forced his help onto her, even when she rejected the offer. She blinked. She looked at him when she realized that he never offered the water to her. He told her to take the water, there was no offer. He told her that she needed the water and did not give her the option to refuse. He judged that she did need the water and that she had none on her. That was what she was missing. She had offered Naruto help when he did not need it instead of watching him and giving him help when he did need the help. You see. Naruto smiled at her. Kindness in excess, if you were too kind, then you wouldn't be able to help the people who needed help. Asia was so kind that she was annoying in how much she tried to help. By being too kind, she was not able to refuse somebody when they told her that they did not need help. That meant that if somebody that did need help refused her, she would not help them. If I want to save lives, then I have to help the people who need me, even if they don't want my help, and when need to know how to tell when I should offer help. How do I tell apart those situations? Asia tried to think. You'll know. What? You will know. Go to the front office, see you in class. Naruto waved to her and walked towards the school, done helping her for the moment. In the underworld. Oh brother. Ajuka felt shame. I caught the criminal, get this shit under control. Ajuka could only look with sadness and anger as he looked at the statue of his younger brother, and he could see that there was a list of crimes painted on his body. He could tell that his brother was still alive as a statue, but he knew what his brother had been doing. He looked at the note in his hand and he felt anger, but that anger was not directed at the person who did this. It was at himself. He should have paid attention to his brother long ago and stopped this before it ever started. He neglected his family, and this was what happened. What the? Rias whispered as she watched Naruto walk around the school, and he was missing his arm. She wondered if it was related to the new girl that started to show up to school that was in the same year as him. She could barely hold back her confusion and concern when she saw her hero was down one of his arms. Everyone swarmed Naruto to ask him about it. Akeno put her hand on her chin and lifted it back up for her, since her jaw had dropped when she saw the missing arm. During lunch. So Naruto-chan. Uh-oh, that is a cutesy tone you're using. Naruto was eating his lunch with Asia, and he was forcing her to eat the same amount as she ate for breakfast. Akeno just joined the table, while Asia was too busy forcing herself to eat to notice. So, you going to ask about the arm then? Naruto asked as he grinned at his rolled back sleeve. Akeno nodded with a smile. Yes, since not long ago, you were right-handed. BFFFT. Naruto held back a laugh when she put it that way. She didn't hold back at making fun of him, despite the way everyone else was trying to help him out. He was amused by the way she phrased it. Long story short, sometimes I don't think things through all the way. Naruto explained with a shrug of his shoulders. That was all there was to it. He made a rash choice based on previous experiences, without thinking about how his life would be after all was said and done. It was simply been a highly emotional moment and he got caught up in the emotions of it all. He wanted to prove a point, and while he did have a plan for helping Asia, in the long run, he blamed his lack of maturity for his rash choice. So it was an accident. No, I cut it off on purpose, and when I went back to go get the arm to reattach it, I couldn't find it. Then again, I threw it off a tall building, maybe it just went splat. Naruto waved his fork around. His grandfather had tried his best to find the arm for him, but no matter where they looked, the arm was just gone. Is that all you're eating? Naruto asked as he looked at Akeno's homemade lunch. She didn't eat a lot for a girl her size. Actually, Rias made too much, so she asked me if I wanted it, but I already ate. Akeno lied through her teeth. She was an expert liar. Rias didn't make it at all, she made it herself, but she was loyal to Rias and wanted to give her a helping hand. She passed the lunch towards Naruto the second she noticed that he had finished eating. He had a massive appetite compared to the other boys at the school, and she glanced over at the new girl. Asia. I need to go lay down. Asia stood up with a hand over her mouth. Naruto grabbed her skirt and pulled on it, lifting it up and showing everyone her panties. She yelped when he yanked her backwards, before he sat her down right next to him again. She had red cheeks and wide eyes. Finish eating everything. Naruto told her. Asia groaned. So cruel. I do enjoy this side of you. If you want, later we can explore this side of you. Akeno whispered as she leaned on the table. She rested her against a hard surface and allowed them to show off their side. She watched as he looked at the bulk of her with a passive face for a moment. Unaffected by that, huh? Akeno muttered to herself. Naruto heard. No, but if you're not showing cleavage when you do that, it doesn't have the same impact. Anyway, Naruto stopped what he was saying. He was almost about to admit to peeking at girls at the bathhouse, both in Kuo and back at his family school. He had experience peeking at girls and not getting caught, so he had seen his fair share of before. He always made sure to not get caught by either his granny or Tsunade on the rare chance that she bathed with the students in the bathhouse. I've got to learn when not to say anything. Naruto grabbed Asia by the skirt again. Lunch lasts another 15 minutes. Go run laps. Naruto told her. Asia only groaned, but she nodded as he let go of her. With that done, he started to eat the lunch that Akeno offered him. Wow, this is amazing. Average, Naruto stated, since Rias wasn't around to hear the comment about her cooking. It tastes good, but honestly, this is just average cooking. It still tastes good, but I wouldn't call it amazing. Well, to some people this might be amazing since it was made by Rias. Naruto could see why a personal bias towards Rias would make the food made by her taste better than it actually was. Akeno froze for a moment, her smile just frozen in place. Average? Yeah, she didn't consider the fact that some dishes should only be served hot, and with boxed lunches like this that doesn't work. See, this dish tastes best cold, but this dish tastes best hot. Naruto pointed to the different dishes. I can't heat this lunch up without ruining part of the lunch, and I can't eat it cool without it affecting the taste too. Naruto continued on without looking at Akeno. Said girl was just silently seething. Oh, and what else makes it average? This entire meal is salt-based, that is too much salt in one meal. See, she should have topped the rice with a little bit of sugar and sprinkle it with cinnamon. That way when you can have something sweet while enhancing the saltiness, and if she cooked the rice with some milk in it, that would have just enhanced the entire experience further. Naruto talked about the food with Akeno, a large smile on his face. He never stopped actually eating the food as he spoke because despite his comments, it still tasted good. Just the average kind of good. Oh, sorry if this is boring to you. My granny always made sure that the school I went to had the best meals. The body needs sugar too, so she always made sure our lunches had something sweet in them, and she just praised cinnamon as a legendary spice. When you eat salt, you also need sugar, she said. Naruto finished off the lunch and put the lid back on it, still unaware that Akeno was covering her frown by holding her interlinking hands together in front of it. Akeno was quiet for several moments after he spoke. Fuck you. What was that? Fuck, you're right, I'll be sure to tell Rias. Oh, don't tell her that. Don't tell her any of this if she asks. Tell her I said it was the best food I've ever eaten, Naruto quickly told Akeno. She froze again. And why is that? I can tell she worked really hard on this, and I don't want to make her feel bad. I can't help it, I'm a guy, I want her to know I appreciate the food. Naruto told Akeno, unaware that Akeno was taking it a very different way. Later that night, Akeno, taste this. Akeno offered Rias a bite of rice with a dead serious frown. Rias raised an eyebrow before she took a bite. It's really good. Fuck, Akeno whispered as she took a bite and she realized that she had been outdone. Naruto had told her the truth because she could easily imagine how this rice would have enhanced the food she made. She did not want to hear Rias compliment the rice, she wanted her to say it was worse than usual. Average, Akeno repeated under her breath with her eye twitching. You seem upset. I'm fine, would you call my cooking amazing? Of course. I see personal bias. Akeno regret telling Naruto that Rias made the food because that meant he would be honest in a way that he might not have been if she had been honest herself. Tomorrow's lunch is going to be different. Akeno spoke to Rias. A change is always nice. Rias agreed that it sounded nice. Akeno nodded. She was going to force Naruto to say her food was delicious. He really wished Rias would stop making him lunch. Or rather, he wished she would stop experimenting as much as she was. This was the 9th day in a row at school that Akeno had come to him with a lunch from Rias. The boxed lunches were good, but they were really messing with his digestion of the meals he was already eating. So how is it? Akeno asked with her eyes glued to his lips. He was going to admit it today. This one is worse than yesterday's for sure. Everything goes together too well, it just blends together. It's easy to eat, but doesn't give off a strong impression, and the flavors are all too subdued to give me anything to compliment. Naruto had to say, this one was worse than the lunch on the first day for sure. Akeno took the lunch from him before he was finished. That afternoon, hey Akeno, I have some questions about ass. Rias looked straight at Akeno's ass as she looked in a naked apron, and she had a face that was troubled as she looked at all of the ingredients she was cooking with. Rias looked across the room and she saw Yudo was laying on the floor with his belly full. Vodka, yeah, that might work and give it some more flavor. Akeno muttered to herself. The alcohol will burn out in the oven and it will give the dish a crisp crust. Akeno grabbed the bottle she used for cooking and poured it into the mix that she was working with. She completely ignored her king, who went over to Yudo. Yudo, are you okay? I'm so full, she's been going nuts. Yudo groaned as he tried to sit up but just laid back down and curled up instead. Why is she naked? She is getting herself in the girlfriend, minced her words. Yudo explained and Akeno started to whip up some eggs in a bowl. She had a look in her eyes that was half filled with malice and half filled with excitement. She had sat him down and forced him to eat each and everything that she had been cooking. For 6 hours. He was miserable, but he could not say no to her, literally. He feared for his life if he uttered the words no, because she was a mad woman at the moment. Light and fluffy, but it's clearly lacking something, it needs to stand out. Akeno frowned as she was whipping milk into the bowl. Rias helped Yudo get out of the room and decided that it would be better if she made herself unknown. A hand touched her shoulder. Rias, do you mind? Of course not. Rias forced a smile when she saw that dangerous glint to Akeno's eyes. It was a look that promised something if she said no. She might own Akeno, but she knew she had no power to flex her authority over the girl right now. Something told it would end poorly for her. At 4 a.m. Perfect, it's perfect. Everything is perfect, it has its own unique flavor, it all goes together well, but nothing clashes in a bad way. Akeno tasted each thing she served Rias when at long last she believed she had perfected the box lunch. She hit all of the core flavors and it all combined to form a savory mouthfeel. The rice was sweet but had a little bit of a sour kick. The veggies were steamed and moist, but they were hiding a secret that would come out after you bit it. She completely perfected how to get the veggies to mix with the rice, and the meat dish could only be described as the perfect blend of spicy and savory. She made sure the dessert part of the lunch was a small slice of cherry pie as well, with a crisp crust that was improved by replacing part of the water with vodka, and she added some apple and lemon to it to make it more moist on the inside, without it making the crust soggy. I'm going to go puke. Rias hobbled out of the room with her hand in front of her mouth and her other hand holding her belly. She was pale-faced. A hand touched her shoulder. We're not done yet. Next day. It's good. Just good. Akeno whispered as she looked at her masterpiece, and Naruto nodded his head. Yeah, it's good, but honestly the lunch focuses on the rice and veggies, but I'm not a veggie guy. I don't really like them that much, but the lunch is really good. Naruto complimented the food that Rias made for him. She had clearly worked very hard to make it, but sadly it was a lunch that was not suited to his tastes. Akeno took a deep breath. She exhaled. Just good. Very good. Naruto confirmed for her, but that didn't change Akeno's face as she looked at the way he was eating it slowly. It would be way better if it focused on the meat and turned the veggies into a side, make the veggies sweet and the rice a little salty. But you said the rice should be sweet. Oh, only when the meal is more salty. Rice needs to complement the meal itself, but give you something to eat to help make the next thing you eat more enjoyable. Naruto tried to put it into the best words that he could. Honestly though, maybe there is some subtle thing in this food I can't notice. Huh? Akeno looked up. He shrugged. Women have more taste buds than men, so they can taste more flavors and can get even more subtle with their cooking. So maybe I'm missing something. Naruto was grabbed by the collar. Akeno planted a big smooch on his face as she became instantly excited, standing up when she realized what she needed to do in order to make the perfect lunch for Naruto. Something that would be able to much better suit his particular palate. She had forgotten that each person had different preferred flavors and that Naruto might be different than herself, Yudo, and Rias. Asia dropped her fork and watched as a stupefied Naruto stared at Akeno as she walked away. What? Asia couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Naruto as well. The next day. Sorry but I can't eat that today, my stomach has been upset since yesterday. Naruto denied Akeno as he walked away, holding his upset stomach with minor pain. He would have loved to try Ria's cooking again, but he couldn't help it that all of the different types of lunches he had been eating was messing with his belly. Akeno watched him walk away before she looked down at her lunch that would go uneaten. She saw a boy in Naruto's class walking by. Here. Akeno pushed the lunch into the boy's hands with a completely unexcited face, not caring in the least who ate the meal at this point. She had worked all through the night to make that lunch under the expectation that she would finally get Naruto to tell her it was delicious. Ah. A big boobed hot time made a lunch for me. Akeno just sighed and walked away, not caring who the boy was at all, or even looking him in the face. The boy she wanted to impress with her lunch was unable to eat it and she didn't care about what some random guy had to say about her cooking. She was sure that he would just say it was delicious, no matter how it tasted. I've improved as a cook at least. Akeno thought as she plastered her ever-present smile onto her lips and kept her eyes closed so that nobody could see her emotions in them. She walked backwards a few times. She grabbed the boy's shoulder. I don't like you. I have no feelings for you at all. I made that lunch for Naruto, but he wasn't feeling well at all. Akeno watched as his face started to sink. You can enjoy the lunch if you want, but I will not be your girlfriend and do not ask me out. I generally have no interest in men at all, so do not go reading anything into this and don't go spreading this around. When the boy's face was done sinking, Akeno started to walk away again with a much more pleased smile on her face. She succeeded in not only making sure there was no misunderstanding between her and the boy, but she also made herself feel better as her sadistic nature was given some fuel. She would have pleasant dreams tonight. Had to make sure nobody thought she was going after some random boy. Parents' Day. A day that parents, guardians, or older siblings would visit the classes of those attending the school and watch them while they studied. It was a rather formal event, which usually just had the family members standing at the back of the class, filming or taking pictures of their kids and siblings. This was the chance for a lot of people to make a good impression on their boyfriend or girlfriend's parents or to show off your worth to the parents of those who you wanted to confess to. It was a prime time, the best time, to get one of them on your side. Nobody expected who came for Naruto though. Nor did they ever expect to see Naruto embarrassed when the elderly woman who came to watch him judged everything he did. Your method of teaching is inferior. You expect students to get the most out of their physical education. If you don't actually push them, what is more, you fail to lead by example. Mito was lecturing the PE teacher. She had him sitting on his knees in front of her, and classes inside the building were able to witness her verbally tear the man down to his very core. She was merciless. Ma'am. No. Mito poked his forehead and left the tip of her finger there. Don't think I didn't notice the poor state of your own health. How can you encourage students to desire to be fit if you yourself are out of shape and honestly, not much to look at? Mito ripped into the man's appearance as well. He seemed to shrink. Boo. Young boys and girls need a figure to look as an example. Young men need a strapping older male to show them how to keep their bodies in shape, and these women need a refined lady to be their goal. You lack discipline in you. Mito changed targets as she walked towards Serziches, who had come to watch his sister. Since he was also part of the school board, Mito decided to give him a chunk of abuse as well. He waited. He agreed with her, but he was wondering how she was going to rip into him. She eyed him up and down a few times before she covered her mouth. You are decent enough, please, make sure that your teachers are satisfactory in the future. During lunch, you expect my son to eat this? Ooh. Naruto slammed his head on the table because Akeno had come again today to give him a lunch, only Mito intercepted it for him. She had opened the contents of the lunch and was inspecting it for all it was worth. Akeno just stared at him before Mito put a hand on her shoulder. Akeno was not expecting the elderly woman to be able to force her to her knees, nor was she expecting for the lunch she made to be placed into her own lap. Now listen here, you obscene woman. When making a lunch for a man, you need to include larger helpings of protein, and this lunch is lacking in both the sugars and types of fat needed to maintain a healthy diet, and it is visually underwhelming. Mito pointed to the various parts of the lunch. Eating begins with the eyes, is enhanced by the nose, and is enjoyed by the tongue, and then it enriches the body. If you can't manage to enhance all of a man's senses with your lunch, then you have failed. Mito took her paper fan and knocked it on top of Akeno's head several times. Akeno glanced at Naruto, who just was burying his face in his hand, unable to let anyone see his face. Akeno looked down in shock when Mito stepped on her knee and pushed it into the ground, causing Akeno to feel discomfort. Also, what is with this small serving size? If you feed a man a woman's serving size, then you aren't fueling his body for success. You are going to make him suffer from malnutrition, which can stunt their growth, lower their energy, and negatively affect their health. During class, Mito was on a rampage. I'm sorry. Not yet. You're not. You expect students to learn just by writing the equation on the board and then telling them to study it. Explain it to them. You are paid to teach them how to do it. Yes, a student must work hard and study, but you are a teacher and you need to be able to properly look after the next generation. Mito had the teacher on his knees once more. The other parents at the back of the class couldn't help but nod their heads in agreement at her words, but none of them had the courage to speak up. Every student stared at Naruto. Stop looking at me. What is more, you aren't challenging them enough. How can they retain the information if it isn't challenging enough to stick with them? Don't coddle these children, force them to work harder. Mito went harder, and now people were starting to give Naruto darker looks when they realized his family member was going to be causing the difficulty of their work to increase. And look at these test scores you handed out. 4 students in this class are nearly failing. You are failing them. The students failing need extra attention. 4 students started to look away from everyone else. It isn't my fault, all of the girls in this school are so sexy, it is hard to focus. Mito turned towards him. Down. Instantly he was down on his knees, and a set of parents in the back covered their faces in horror, realizing their son was going to get torn to pieces by this monster of a woman. Instead, Mito just placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. You are not a man, you are a child. Grow up and become a man worthy enough to be viewed as an object of affection. During club activities later, this room is acceptable and you have a shower installed. Good, a clean body is important, though the open location is rather inappropriate. Mito looked over the club that Naruto claimed that he was in. The Occult Research Club. Rias raised an eyebrow when she saw the woman judging the room, and she looked at Naruto, who was apologizing with his body language. She smiled and shrugged mentally, since this was a good chance for her to make a decent impression on a member of his family. Yes, the study of the occult is a serious matter to us, and oftentimes it is dirty work. Rias spoke respectfully in both her words and body language. She didn't notice, but Akeno seemed depressed for some reason. As club president, I overlook the studies we well study. Currently, we are studying the difference between Western and Eastern spirits. Rias explained gently. The Occult Research Club was not just a front for them to be devils, it was also a alleged subject that she studied in the human realm, which had a surprising diversity of occult topics. She liked to study yokai whenever she got the chance, though the chance rarely came up. Unacceptable. Rias had a hand placed on her shoulder. Unacceptable, you speak well, your posture is impeccable, your manners are cultured, and you clearly take care of yourself, but I do not accept this. Mito stared at Rias. What? You expect me to believe that the only reason you wish for Naruto to be around you is so that you can study the occult together? I am aware of how you devils use humans, and I find it unacceptable for my son around one who wishes to use him. Mito started to go at Rias as well. Naruto slammed his face into the wall. Into it, as in his head put a hole in the wall, and he kept his head in the wall until Mito was done. Unacceptable, I have no such desire to use Naruto for anything other than his company, he is quite amusing after all. Rias stood up and stared down at Mito, being a decent amount taller than the elderly woman. She would not allow herself to be talked down to like this, even more so by somebody she was just now meeting. You enjoy his company, do you? Tell me, what did you learn about him while in his company? Mito challenged Rias. Rias smirked. His favorite color is orange, but his second favorite color is red. He wishes he was born with straight red hair instead of blonde messy hair. He enjoys ramen, miso pork to be exact, and he always has an extra helping of meat in any bowl he orders if he can help it. He loves to garden, and he names all of the plants he takes care of, with his favorite plant being Mr. Aki, a plant he has been raising in secret to give as a gift to the Kendo club. Rias spoke as she started to list off things she knew about Naruto. Naruto took his head out of the wall and raised an eyebrow. Ooh. He is exactly 166 centimeters tall, and when he looks at a woman, first he looks at her eyes, then her hair, followed by her thighs, then butt, followed by her, then her face. He prefers sandals over shoes, and he feels naked without a headband or something to cover his forehead. His nose is the first thing to turn red when he blushes. What? Mito whispered as Rias started to list off everything. Oh, and he enjoys pranking the various clubs, but nobody has realized it has been him. His favorite food might be ramen, but that isn't his only favorite. He loves red bean soup, but he keeps it a secret. He hates fresh veggies, but he is fine with them if they are mixed into ramen, but he isn't actually a picky eater, he will eat anything if it is in front of him. Rias continued her lecture of all of the different things she had learned about Naruto. He also has confidence issues in ways people wouldn't expect. He is self-conscious about his height, and Rias stopped when she realized what she was about to say. She made eye contact with Naruto, and her face turned bright red. Akeno, why did you tell Rias all of that stuff? Naruto asked Akeno with a deadpan tone, since most of that stuff were things he had talked about with Akeno over the lunches they would eat together. Mito clapped her hands though. Now that is acceptable. Truly, you have been paying attention to him. You do a credit to your species, for I have never known a devil to see a human and bother remembering anything about them. Very well, you may continue to befriend him. Mito clapped her hands. She approved of their friendship. But don't think that I approve of you completely. That lunch you made for him. Akeno's eyes widened in horror. Lunch? I haven't made any lunches for him. Rias spoke with genuine confusion, while Akeno subtly slipped herself out of the room while nobody was looking at her. She stopped when Naruto glanced in her direction, and she decided to face him. She took a deep breath. Time to come clean. Actually, Kiba asked me to give you those lunches. He is actually gay and wanted to show his affection for you, but he was too shy. Akeno lied with ease and blamed the lunches on Kiba instead. She watched as Naruto's face went paler and she knew that he had bought her lie once more. Rias raised an eyebrow at the lie though, since she knew that Akeno had been making the lunches. Why was she lying? An invitation. Hey cousin, I'm engaged to this girl I met a few months ago at a ramen bar, the same bar that you funded. I would really appreciate it if you would come to my engagement party. You can bring a date if you want, but your peerage can't come. The geezer doesn't want any low-class devils at the party, so high-class devils and a single guest only. When did this happen? Rias asked as she thought of her muscle-bound cousin, who spent all of his time training his body and his own peerage. The man had found a lover apparently in a few months and had gotten engaged. Not that the engagement after a few months was too shocking, for their long lives her species tended to get married after meeting their lover in the span of a few months. They were not a patient people. She wanted to use this chance to invite Naruto to be her date, but she didn't want to turn her cousin's special day into something that she could abuse. It was a day about him and she wanted to keep it that way. When did what happen? Naruto was in the club room, reading a magazine as he laid back on the couch. He was relaxed now that Mito had gone away and he was avoiding the other students for a while. Since the teachers had started to give all of the students even more homework and the PE teacher was forcing them to work harder while also working harder as well. School life had gotten much harder for those who were struggling and it had caused some of Naruto's popularity to become tainted. So he was giving everyone time to cool off. My cousin got engaged and I need a date for the party. Cool, good for him or her. Naruto didn't know a bunch about Ria's family structure other than she had a father, mother and brother. That was about the extent to his knowledge of how her family worked. Kiba entered the room. Awkward. Naruto got up and left the room as soon as Kiba entered, with an awkward pat on Kiba's shoulder and a sorry face as he left. He didn't finish listening to Rias because he just could not be in the same room as Kiba. Later, so this is the infamous Naruto. I'm eating. Naruto stated as he showed his bowl of ramen and he noticed a tall, muscular man with a fallen angel woman next to him. The guy seemed kind of familiar to him and he sat down at the same table as Naruto with a bowl of ramen between his hands. Okay, join me I guess. I just wanted to thank you. Why? Naruto deadpanned. Thanks to your Raymond record, I was lucky enough to meet this woman here. My name is Sarah Bale, and this is my fiancé. We met only a few months ago when we were both trying to beat your record. Sarah introduced himself to Naruto. He looked at Naruto's picture on the wall, standing in front of a huge number of empty bowls. He had heard the rumors that the human who humiliated their society had humiliated 3 of the 4 Satans in a match of gluttony. So he had to try and beat the record to break the record of a man who defeated almost all of the Devil Kings in a sin. I am the same. I wanted to beat the human who beat the devils to prove my superiority as a fallen angel, and we happened to meet. The black-haired, rather beautiful woman spoke as she grabbed onto Sarah's arm. And this idiot, haha. Well, I got drunk and me and this idiot got into an argument. In the end, we settled it with a competition and I won. I held my own. What kind of competition could this weakling win against this guy? Naruto gauged the woman as weak. He could tell that in no physical or mental ability should this woman have defeated the man, nor should she had won in an eating contest. He didn't question it too much though, since honestly, he didn't care at all. He didn't know these people, and he took no part in whatever it was that went down between them. Well, the next morning we actually talked and found that we have a lot in common. We both want strength more than anything. So he helped me train, and things kind of snowballed from there. The woman smiled seductively, and her eyes gained a wicked glint to them. Showing that despite being in love, she was a naturally evil person deep down. She trained to get stronger and was still as weak as she was. That was kind of sad. Well, we wanted to thank you because we both wanted to break your Raymond record and defeat the Satans. We met each other and bonded. Sarah stated as he smiled proudly at Naruto, and Naruto could see this guy was a good person deep down. Unlike the woman who he was in love with, but it would seem that balanced each other out. Would you please come to our engagement party as a guest of honor? Sarah asked politely, seriously. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Why? My fiancé and I wanted to thank you. We want to treat you to fine devil cuisine. No, fallen angel cuisine. I thought we agreed we would go with fallen angel cooking for the party and devil cooking for the reception. The woman poked his muscles with an annoyed face. The muscle man just laughed and rubbed where she poked him. Despite the fact that they were arguing, it seemed like it was being done in good nature. Anyway, we have you to thank for our engagement, so would you come to the party? Sure, I guess I can go. Naruto didn't have a reason not to go. Thank you. That is great, let's go Sarah. We have a lot to talk about later. The woman grabbed her man by the arm and pulled him away from the table. Naruto watched as they stood up and started to leave the ramen bar arm in arm. See you at the party. Naruto waved to them. Rainer and I will be waiting for you. Naruto hoped the food was good at the party. He was bored. He might as well invent a new technique or something, or maybe he could reinvent another technique from his memories. It was weeks until the engagement party, rescheduling issues for whatever reason, and he had nothing to do but schoolwork. The work that really wasn't all that hard compared to what Mito would make him do. I could also go and sneak a peek. Naruto looked over at the club shower. Currently in use by Rias herself. The shower that was in the corner of the room for no apparent reason other than to give the guys in the room something to look at when one of the 2 girls were using it. Not that Kiba would ever peek since he was gay and had no reason to peek on girls. What was the most likely reason why Rias was so comfortable showering with Kiba in the room before now? So can we talk about never mind. Kiba saw Naruto deep in thought and decided not to start the topic of Akeno's lie about him being gay. I got it. The Byakugan. Maybe it was possible that he could recreate it with some magic from this world. It would be the perfect peeking tool and nobody would know any better that he was stealing the superpower from his memories in another world. Naruto jumped to his feet and dropped to his knees before he used his fingers to make a circle in front of his eye. What are you? Akeno couldn't help herself but start to ask. Naruto held his breath and tried to force his eye to change. A white magical circle started to appear around his pupil as he forged the magic over the top of his eye. He used his memories of Neji and Hinata in order to picture the Byakugan in his mind. Magic was the power of imagination and calculations, and he kind of knew what he wanted to achieve. Inventing a new magic, trying really hard. Naruto was turning red in the cheeks from the mental effort it was taking to not screw up. He closed the eye that his finger circle was not in front of. Oh, what kind of magic? Rias asked since she was still in the room, just taking a shower. Seeing if I can enhance my eye to be able to see 360 degrees and to see the flow of magic in the body. Naruto left out the fact that he would also be able to see through things. He finished the first white circle in his eye and he could see Akeno standing behind him and Kiba was sitting to his right. He achieved the 360 degrees part at least, but he needed to do more than just that. The second magic circle started to appear on top of the first one, making more of the blue in his eyes turn to white. Seeing the flow of magic that would be very useful. Akeno murmured to herself, since she could do so much with the knowledge of how magic flowed. She would be able to see an attack coming before it happened. With that knowledge, once she learned to read magic, she could use that pre-knowledge to predict attacks. She would also be able to target the points of the body where the enemy had weaker magical defenses. Yeah, super useful. Naruto just talked without paying attention to her. Akeno's top layer disappeared from her body to Naruto's eyes, leaving her with just her bra and panties, as far as his eyes were concerned. The shower curtain wasn't the same as clothes though, and Naruto purposely avoided paying attention to what was happening with Kiba. He didn't care enough to pay attention, even if he could see it. He could kind of see the hazy outline of her clothes, and he could kind of see Rias through the shower curtain as well. The steam. Naruto's eye formed another magic circle on top of the pupil itself this time, and he thought about the results he wanted and how to achieve it. Akeno's underwear started to disappear, and soon enough he could not only see through her outer layer, but he could clearly see through her lower layer. He focused towards Rias, and the layer of steam making her hazy seemed to clear away to his eye. Naruto was satisfied. He recreated most of the Byakugan using magical powers. A magic to see 360 degrees, a magic to see through solid objects, and a magic that would let him read the flow of magic. Outside of combat that last one was useless, but the ability to read the flow of magic allowed him to focus the magic of the X-ray vision if he could adjust the flow around his eye with it. So, did you manage to do it? Akeno placed a hand on his shoulder. Nice hair. What? Akeno asked, since Naruto muttered something under his breath when she got closer. She didn't quite catch what he had whispered. Nice flare makes my eye look cool. Naruto stood up straight and showed off his wide eye. He reached up when he felt a tear go down his face and looked at the tear, only to realize that he was bleeding out of his eye. The veins around his eye were bulging and throbbing, so he cut the magic instantly. His eye was bloodshot, he could feel it, and something had not gone right. His eye didn't hurt that much. Gotta fine-tune it and train it. Naruto would be able to use this to his advantage. Are you okay? It's fine, as long as it's not my nose. Naruto was happy that he didn't get a nosebleed, that would have exposed what he had done right away. By the way, thanks for the lunches Kiba, but I'm not gay, we can still be friends if you want. Naruto turned towards Kiba and decided that he would clear the air between himself and Kiba. Kiba's jaw dropped. But I'm not. It's okay to be gay, but I'm not gay, and even if I was I wouldn't want to date a friend. Naruto gently let Kiba down. I'm not fine, thank you for letting me down gently. Kiba decided that no matter what he said, Naruto was not going to believe that he was not gay. Out of all of them, Naruto had spent more time with Akeno, so he was more likely to believe her than them. She already put it firmly into his head, so he would just accept it for now until he could prove to Naruto that he liked women. Do you need to get your eye looked at? That is a lot of blood. It's fine, Naruto rubbed the blood out of his eye. He did use it to see Akeno and Rias naked, so the bleeding eye was his payment for him recreating something that he would abuse. Naruto left the room when he opened his eye again and realized that it was still freely bleeding. He needed to go and see Asia about some healing. He left just as Rias walked out of the shower. Oops, guess I forgot to leave a change of clothes next to the shower. Rias conveniently forgot to bring a towel with her, so she was butt naked with only her hands covering her nipples and crotch. She had a fake embarrassed look, only for her to stop covering herself and changing her position, so she was supporting her with her arms. Damn. She wanted to flash him and then try to tease him about it. You just missed. Kiba informed her. Maybe I should just sneak into his bed. That won't end well for you. Akeno told her, since Naruto had told her a little secret about the last few times an unnamed girl he knew tried to do that. He never told her the name of the girl, but he did tell that sometimes he could be a very rough sleeper. I can record it if you want. Akeno had a phone, and she was willing to record Rias and Naruto all night. She so wanted to know what Naruto meant by him being rough. See you later, Asia. Thank you. Asia bowed to him before she turned and walked towards the building he dropped her off at. She was being dropped off at her therapist, who she saw twice a week for several hours at a time. She entered the building while Naruto shrugged his shoulders, since while it was Mito's idea for Asia to attend twice weekly therapy, he didn't really understand how it would help her. She couldn't talk about the truth to a human therapist after all. Still, she seemed happier since she started to go attend therapy, so clearly it helped her. He didn't want her to develop an unhealthy reliance on him to solve all of her problems, so even if he didn't understand it himself, the current route they were on was the best route for her mental health. Learning to rely on more than just one person to fix all her problems and learn to understand herself much better. All good things. After all, if he solved all of her problems for her, then she might come to fall in a false love with him, a love that was purely one-sided. A love that only existed for as long as he could solve every problem, or a love that she would delude herself into thinking existed. If she started to mistake feelings of gratitude for romantic love and a friendship for romance, then that would ruin her chances for a genuine romance based on real emotions. My eye hurts. Naruto rubbed his eye. Asia healed the bleeding, but then fact remained that he tried to make magic circles on his eye and he wrote multiple circles with different effects onto an eye that was not built for it. The pain was very slight, but enough to be annoying. It would seem he would either need practice or he would need to rethink how he was going to replicate the Byakugan. He was not even going to try the Sharingan. Too many abilities for him to replicate them all, and if his eye was bleeding with a false Byakugan, he would hate to think what a false Sharingan would do to his eye to fuck it up. Honestly, the Byakugan was somewhat easy since he knew the abilities, but even he didn't know every ability the bullshit eye his rival owned had. Oh, Naruto, fancy meeting you here. I literally come here twice a week, every Monday and Thursday, at this exact time when I drop Asia off. Naruto knew that since he was always here at this time, that seeing Rias here meant that she had something she wanted to talk to him about. She had approached him several times at school and she was also starting to eat lunch with him. It would seem that she was trying to grow closer to him, but she was awkward about it. His eyes wandered to her for a moment, remembering what they looked like, and he nodded to himself. Nice. So the new Menma movie came out. Menma the movie. Samurai Clash in the Land of Drought. Rias showed some tickets in her hand. It's an anime movie, but I figured it might be fun to see it together. Rias offered. I figured since the main character is named after Menma and your name is short for Narutomaki that maybe it might be funny. Rias didn't really know what she should say in this situation. Naruto paused. Samurai ninjas would be better and drought. Obviously snow would be better visually and Menma clearly Narutomaki is better. Naruto complained since he could see the clear resemblance to a movie that existed back in the other world his memories were from. It was a movie that he had unknowingly starred in, a movie named after him when he went on a mission to protect and deliver a princess to her home country. He wished he could sue right now, but he had no case, but he was curious about how much of a coincidence this was. Yeah sure Naruto the movie. Ninja Clash in the Land of Snow it sounds good. Rias agreed with a thumbs up. She just wanted him to accept. Nah, but you're more than welcome to come to my apartment with me, I was just about to crossbreed some plants. I would like to crossbreed with you. Rias stated off the top of her head, the words came out of her mouth before she could even think to stop them. She blinked a few times before she gained red to her cheeks when she realized just how forward she was being with that statement. Awesome, I could use the help. Naruto grinned. I'm about to stabilize a new type of fruit, I'm on the 7th generation and now almost all of the fruit are coming out consistent. 1 or 2 more generations should do it. Thankfully he didn't notice her slip. That actually does sound interesting. Rias had to agree that whatever he was doing did sound like something she wanted to watch. It was certainly not something that she would have expected out of him. She knew he liked to garden, but she didn't know that he was doing something like this. So, what are you making? Rias asked as he got onto his motorcycle. First time she noticed the motorcycle and he pat the back of it for her to get on. He even passed the helmet that Asia had been wearing. At the apartment, oh wow, yeah, hard to explain here, have a taste. Naruto plucked a fruit off of a small flowering plant that had a few fruit on it. It looked like a bright green peach. She took a bite and was surprised when a great amount of juice from it flowed into her mouth. She had juices spill from the fruit onto her white shirt and stain it with a dark red juice. She was so surprised and dropped the fruit out of shock. She blinked in surprise when she saw the inside of the fruit was that same red color. What is this? It kind of tastes like it's tart. It is like a sweet and tart. Rias didn't know how to describe it, but it was filled with flavor and it tasted good. Almost like a tart candy, and she looked inside to see a large seed was inside of the middle. It didn't quite have any specific fruit taste to it. What is it? Well, me and my old man made this fruit that is a cross between a grape and an apple, and then he decided to crossbreed that with blackberries, and now I'm taking that and crossbreeding it with peaches. Naruto described the family lineage as best as he could. He showed a flowering, 2 of them, that were inside of 2 sealed-off containers, covered by class. This is one of the 5th generation plants, and I need to breed these 2 together to get it more stable. Naruto showed the sealed-off plants. He pressed a button on an air filter. He grabbed a shirt off the floor and passed it to her. Thank you, no problem, gotta get all of the pollen out of the air before we can start anyway. After I get a couple of stable plants, I'm going to send one to my old man so he can cross it with something. Naruto told her as he sat down on the couch. He and Hashirama had been doing this for several years now, where they would practice their senjutsu by cross-breeding plants and growing them faster with the use of nature power. Rias came out of the bathroom moments later, wearing his shirt, but it was pulled very tight across her chest. So are you competing with him? Rias sat down on the couch. Naruto laughed. Ah, nah. It's just some fun we're having, just a way to give some funny fruit, train a little if you want, you can take one of the 6th generation plants home with you. Naruto didn't mind if she took it. It was likely going to be one of the stable plants, so he doubted that there would be any issues with her having one. By the way, don't eat too much of these fruits. For some reason they aren't dangerous, but you will feel it. The fruit seemed to be having an aphrodisiac-like effect on the people who ate them, and the more you ate, the stronger the effect was. At the very least, it boosted libido and recovery time, since he had been eating the fruits every day for a week and he could tell the difference in himself. He was doomed to stop eating them once he sent the finished product back home. Okay, we can start now. Going to do this by hand. We've got to collect pollen from the open flowers on this plant and transfer them to the unopened flowers on this plant. Naruto explained how it was going to go. There is more to it than this. After the transfer, we have to seal off each flower so that they don't self-pollinate or become contaminated. Once the fruit starts to sprout, we can take the wrapping off. Naruto explained to Rias as he took some clippers. -1 long cross-breeding scene later, and now Naruto held his palm facing up and he gathered natural energy between onto palm. He placed his palm on the pot and transferred the life-giving power. Rias watched as the fruits on the plant started to form and grow. Naruto grinned when every fruit was a thick-skinned, green peach in appearance. He took the coverings off of the fruits and passed one towards Rias. He sank his teeth into one and the juices splattered across his face and shirt. Rias followed suit and covered herself in the fruit's blood-colored juices and she noticed the taste was about the same. She saw Naruto continue to eat the fruits and he pulled out all of the seeds as he did so and was planting them into soil-filled pots that were waiting for seeds. Naruto took the glass containers and covered 2 of the potted seeds. It tastes the same. Naruto transferred life energy into all of the potted plants and they started to grow fast enough for Rias to be able to see as new flowers and fruit started to form. She watched as several of the 6 generations of plants sprouted the exact same fruit as before and as all of them matured, she noticed all of them were exactly the same. Yep, seems pretty stable to me. Going to send one to the old man, keep one for myself, gotta get rid of old generations, might as well plant them somewhere and you can take one home. Naruto started to load the plants up into boxes he had sitting to the side. He would find a nice place in the woods to plant the imperfect plants and he would keep one of the perfect plants. I wonder what he's going to send back to me. Naruto couldn't wait to see what Hashirama sent him back. So I can just have one? Yeah, pick one out. You want one of the ones the old man sent to me? Naruto stated as he picked some berries off of a potted plant in the room with him and he passed them into her palm. She tried it. Ria's face morphed as she sucked her lips into her mouth and her entire face puckered at just how sour the previous fruit that Naruto crossed was. It was so sour that she couldn't open her mouth to spit it out and her eyes started to water. The juices that flooded her mouth exploded with flavor before red juice came out of her nose when she started to cough. The old man called this berry devil's dew. You can't even taste how sweet it is because the juices are just that sour. Naruto grinned when Rias was shaking her arms like a chicken, her entire body was having a visible reaction to the fruit. She danced in place, hopping from foot to foot, her eyes leaking tears. PFFFFT. So strong. Rias forced herself to bite into a fresh fruit and the juices from Naruto's fruit countered the ones from Devil's Dew. She smacked her lips against her own will. Why was it so sour? Naruto shrugged his shoulders. Sometimes it just turns out that way. I have no clue why this fruit tastes like this. Funny part, after eating a few of them, it makes your sweat smell super sweet. Naruto had worked up a sweat after eating a few and he tried it out several times. Side effect, which with how sour it is super funny. Naruto laughed at the irony that the most sour fruit gave you sweet-smelling sweat. Devil's Dew. So what are you going to name yours? Rias asked him after recovering. Bloody hell. Naruto laughed at the name. After all, both he and Rias looked like they were covered from mouth to chest in blood after eating them. Later, Rias, are you okay? Akeno was instantly worried. Rias entered the home covered in blood. Try this. Rias gave a fruit to Akeno, who raised an eyebrow, but after a moment, she just did what was asked of her and tried the fruit. It's called Devil's Dew. Akeno collapsed and started to shake as her entire body puckered up at the taste of the sour fruit. Rias nodded to herself and she saw Akeno suffering for a little bit before she gave Akeno the cure that was bloody hell. Akeno was covered in juices in moments of being handed the fruit and she looked down at her chest. Ah, you aren't covered in blood. That's right, I'm going to send this home, let my parents try it. Rias gestured to the potted plant that she was keeping under her arm. After she sent it to her parents, she was going to lay down on her bed. Then she was going to masturbate until the heat in her crotch faded away. 2 weeks. Sirzichas walked through the halls of the Gremory Castle with visible worry on his face, seeing as he was here to make sure his parents were okay. Nobody had heard of them in 2 weeks and his father had not been doing his work as the leader of the clan. That was cause for alarm, since not even the servants had seen them leave their bedroom. He had his wife behind him, who was in her maid uniform. He was visibly nervous and holding her hand helped him calm down. What if his parents had been assassinated? He had worries like that since 2 weeks was a long time for nobody to see them. He could only hear his own heart beating in his ears as he stopped in front of the bedroom. Silence. Mother, father, I'm coming in. Serziches opened the door. Red. Blood. His parents were covered in blood, but naked and splayed out. His mother had semen coming out of her vagina in heavy amounts, and her eyes were rolled into her head. Neither of his parents were moving, the bed was covered in blood, their bodies were covered in it, and their mouths were dyed red in blood. His father was in no better condition, his entire upper body was covered in the red goo. There was so much blood. Serziches felt fury enter his veins when he realized that his parents had not only been murdered, but his mother's corpse had been fucked. Ooh, father. Serziches heard his father groan, and he rushed to the man's side and wrapped his arms around him to flip him over onto his back. He gently held the man's head up, and he could see that he had lost so much blood that he looked like he was sucked dry. His father smelled strangely sweet. Serziches, my son, beware, beware the bloody hell, Zioticus whispered as he gently touched his son's face before he passed out. Father. -2 hours later, Serziches held his face in his hands in humiliation. His parents had not been murdered in their bed, instead, they had just gotten lust drunk off of some fruit plant that Rias had sent them from the human world. It was a combination that had a strong aphrodisiac effect that was even stronger on devils, and all of the blood had just been the juices of the fruit. It would seem that it was an extremely juicy fruit, and the small tree that was in their room was so filled with life energy that they had just been eating the fruits from it for 2 weeks. They had fucked, ate fruit, slept, and fucked some more when they woke up. For 2 weeks. I'm so embarrassed that I got so angry. Serziches couldn't help himself as his parents ate their first real meal in weeks and drank water instead of the juices of the fruit. That was a wonderful meal. Venilana gracefully finished her meal. Serziches could not look her in the face. His father was still severely dehydrated though, it would seem that his mother had been much more affected by the fruit than him. She had drained him dry so many times and only passed out when she finally hit the true end to her stamina for the day. The sex would never end until she passed out, and she refused to let him leave the bedroom, and once she passed out, he lacked the energy to leave until she woke up, ate some fruit, and then demanded he go again. So this is bloody hell. Serziches looked away from his parents and right at the green peach that was in front of him. He looked at the plant he got it from, and he saw that there was a note in the soil. He saw that it had been a gift to Rias from Naruto, and she sent it home so that they could try the fruit for themselves. He grabbed the fruit and he raised it to his lips before he took a single bite from it. Serziches was shocked when the second he bit into the fruit, bloody juices shot all over his clothes and his face. It is so filled with energy, there is an unnatural amount of life force inside of each fruit. Zioticus explained as another fruit grew on the tree in the time that it took for Serziches to realize what had happened to him. Apparently, it was grown by Naruto using senjutsu and gathering a huge amount of power inside of it. Zioticus pushed the fruit away from himself. Eating 1 or 2 was fine, though it would still enhance your libido by a decent amount and make you hornier. Devil biology gave them the ability to suck energy out of other creatures, with female devils had thigh power much stronger than males. When they ate the fruit, the concentrated life energy would enter their bodies and further enhance the effects of the aphrodisiac fruit. Not to mention the way they were covered in the juices was just a natural turn on. You're right, devils can't naturally use or rather nature's energy, no wonder Serziches realized as he took his second bite of the fruit. This was an energy type that devils were not used to at all, it was against their biology, so the effects of the energy was just that much stronger on them. He could see why his mother would have overdosed on the fruit so easily. He glanced in her direction and saw that she seemed to be glowing. She licked her lips when she looked at the fruit in his hand, and her flush returned when she wiped the saliva from her lips. Also, you're going to be getting a new sibling. Huh? Serziches asked with shock slowly setting into his face when his father casually revealed that tidbit of information. Intaking a large amount of life energy and a strong fertility effect from the fruit, it seemed to have boosted your mother's ability to conceive, and it so happened to coincide with a time when she was ovulating. We did do it for 2 weeks. Zioticus was happy to give the news that he would be having another child with his wife, but he was slightly embarrassed that it was less because of his own sexual skill and more because his wife had become a horny monster who drained him dry. It was a miracle fruit. Devils were not the most fertile of species when it came to sex with each other due to their naturally long lives and lack of need to breed. Hahaha, you're saying that these fruits can solve our species' problem with repopulation. If we have these fruits, conceiving children will be easier. Serziches could barely imagine how precious the fruit he was eating truly was. Could he had planned this? Could he be so in love with Rias that he wants to solve our species' fertility issue? Serziches could only be thankful when he realized how this could help their species. It was clearly, very clearly, an engagement gift from him to Rias, a present of his love. It seems like it won't be long before our Rias comes home with a swollen belly of her own. Venilana blushed in excitement as she thought of having a child at about the same time as her own daughter due to the enhancement of the fruit. Ziotica said nothing. We could profit so much off of this, or we could keep this a Gremory family secret and increase our own numbers and become known as the family of fertility. Zeodicus knew that it would be best to spread the fruit around and make money off of it, but that could change the balance of power too much. It would be better for the Gremory family if they could just become more known for their massive ability to impregnate and get impregnated and be seen as the repopulators of Devil Society. Xerxes just looked at his mother like she was drunk. Ha ha ha, her body tensed up as she breathed in the heavy scent of the fruit and she looked at the remains of what Xerxes finished eating. She squeezed her legs tightly together and managed to just barely control herself from doing anything. She squirmed and started to sweat before she slapped both of her cheeks and used the pain to calm herself down. We should get ready, it won't be long before Sarerg's engagement party, we can thank Naruto for the delicious fruit there. Venelana stated. Seems he won't be going. Huh? With Naruto. Here I thought idiots don't get sick, it hurts to laugh. Naruto was in his own bed, layered with blankets and a wet rag on his forehead. It would seem that he had gotten a severe case of the flu, enough that he didn't even want to so much as get out of bed. Which sucked because that meant he was going to have to send a message saying he couldn't go to the engagement party. He didn't want to get everyone at the party sick or sneeze into the cake, which with his luck would happen. He would sneeze all over that cake. It didn't help that Mito had just strengthened the seal on him, which weakened his immune system while his body was getting stable. Also, maybe he shouldn't have gone to school when there were multiple cases of sickness going around. He needed to be careful not to stress his body out too much or else his body would be put through horrible pain, unlike anything that a human body was designed to receive. He was in for a horrible couple of days. Just the worst.